Well, a pleasant good afternoon to everybody out there in Irish Breakdown land. I'm Vince D'Addario. That guy over there is Ryan Roberts. We are in today to talk about keys to an Irish victory in the Sun Bowl. It is Wednesday, December 27th, which means in about 49 hours, Notre Dame will be kicking off because it is 1 o'clock. It is a 2 o'clock kickoff. And so Notre Dame kicking off against Oregon State. I thank you very much.
That was good math, man. I thought you used to be a gym teacher. That was pretty good, though.
I know, right? I'm actually impressed with myself.
Yes.
That was out of nowhere that I was able to do that. That's enough thinking, though, for one Christmas break, in my opinion, as far as math is concerned. But Ryan and I are here to talk about keys to an Irish victory. Brian is en route to El Paso, so he'll be down there, boots on the ground, so to speak, and following the Irish and doing what he does at bowl games and having all the fun and a couple of reminders. So we're going to do keys to victory. We'll do offense. We'll do defense. Then we'll have a mailbag afterwards. So if you've got questions, put that little MB or the little mailbox, symbol in there, and we'll get your question started, and we'll do the best we can to answer everybody depending on time. And then also there is going to be a get together down in El Paso tomorrow. Right, Ryan? I don't know the 28th? Details. What do you
28th,
got?
Right?
28th. Yeah, it's tomorrow.
Yeah. It's on the message board. So Brian has the location already on there. So if you're on the message board, I believe it's just titled IB El Paso Get Together or something like that. Wait, give me a second. I'm gonna get the exact wording. So here it is. IB Sun Bowl Meetup in El Paso. If you're on the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I'm not going to disclose the information over the podcast, but if you want the location and the information on where they all will be meeting up in El Paso, message Brian Driscoll on Twitter, and you'll be able to send you the time, the place, where they're all going, all the type of information. But if you're on the message board, again, it has already been posted for the last couple of days.
Yes. So, like I said, I was obviously at the Fiesta Bowl 2 years ago. We did a meetup, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of people were there. We had a good time, watched some football, talked some football, had some appetizers and some beverages, and really had a good time. It was nice to meet some people. So, if you're going to be in the El Paso area, or you have the ability to get to the El Paso area tomorrow, make sure you hit that up. Should be a lot of fun.
Find the desert, man. Get to the desert. Get there, folks.
It will be fun. And then, of course, we've got kickoff for the game, 2 o'clock on Friday, Eastern time on CBS. Ryan and I will kick off the post-game show pretty soon after the game is over. And then however long it takes Brian to finish up what he's doing at the stadium, get back over to the hotel. I'm sure he'll jump on and give his thoughts all, but this will be the final post-game show of the 23 season. So make sure you guys hop on, have a good time with us, and hopefully we'll be talking about a Notre Dame victory, Ryan.
And speaking of Texas travels, Vince, on Monday, I will be heading down to San Antonio, Texas for the All-American Bowl as well. So if you're not signed up at boards.irishbreakdown.com, or you don't just visit the site at irishbreakdown.com, I will be having daily breakdowns, practice reports, player interviews, all that jazz down in El Paso. I believe practice actually starts on the 2nd of January, but I'll be down there from January 1st to January 6th. If anybody wants to meet up down there as well, I'll be the only one from IB represented there, but I am more than happy. I know they have the great River Walk down in San Antonio, which is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, man, it's dope. We went there last year, 1 or 2 nights, and it's just like a 2-mile square radius. Probably
nice.
20 bars and, just places to eat and restaurants. And it's really nice, man. So if anybody's down in San Antonio from the 1st to the 6th, make sure to hit me up, but also check out the content because there will be a lot of practice reports and player interviews and all that good stuff.
Nice. Boots on the ground again. So, and I believe all of the Notre Dame players that are in the 24 class that are in like a postseason game are in that game. Right. So it's one-stop shopping for you, right? Is that accurate at all?
So there was 3 players that were slated to play in the U.S. Army game that happened about a week ago. So Bodie Cahoon played in that football game. Mikey Gilbert played in that football game. Leonard Moore was supposed to play in that football game, but he was unfortunately not able to participate. In this game, there are 5 Notre Dame commits in the 2024 class that will be down in San Antonio, including Kingston Viliamoasa, Cam Williams, amongst others. So some of the premier players signed in 2024 will be down in El Paso.
Nice. So, okay, I'm going to plead ignorance here. I thought the Army game was in El Paso. It's not. I mean, in San Antonio.
So this is like the weird thing, right, Vince? Is that the All-American Bowl used to be the U.S. Army game, all right, and then it got rebranded. It's just called the All-American Bowl. I think it's Signing Day Sports runs basically the U.S. Army game, which is technically different now. So it's basically like a reboot of that game. So they were once the same. You are correct, but now they're kind of separate entities, I suppose. If we're going to say
Now, do they still have like the Under Armour one in Florida? Don't they do that over there?
In Florida, yeah. But last year, Notre Dame only had like 2 players, I think, that participated in that one. And I don't, including Braylon James, who's no longer with the program. And I haven't heard anything about that game this year. So I'm assuming that there's not much Notre Dame representation there. But our U.S. Army game, though, again, Cam Williams, Kingston Viliamoasa. There's some good players down in El Paso or in San Antonio, not El Paso.
So I got you. I did it too. So I'm nailing you on that one. That's my bad. So a lot of action in Texas for current and yet future Notre Dame players over the next week and a half. So make sure you stay locked in to the boards.irishbreakdown.com for Ryan's updates. And then, of course, he'll have some stories and interviews and all that fun stuff and nothing but first class, reporting from down there in the land of Texas. So
you're too kind, man.
It's true.
Too kind. Yes.
It's true. So, all right. Hopefully, as I said before, Ryan and I will be talking about a victory for Notre Dame football in the post-game show in, a little over 2 days from now. But in order to make that happen, Ryan has his keys to an Irish victory. And so we are going to roll through those. We're going to do offense first, and then we'll do a reset. We'll hit some defense. And then, like I said, we will do a mailbag as well. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to put those in, and we'll star them, and we'll get back to them as we go. And so we kind of touched on some of this yesterday, Ryan. We were talking about kind of who Oregon State is, what we think they're going to be.
I was jumping the gun yesterday, Vince. I let the cat out of the bag at a couple of my keys to victory yesterday. But if you didn't check out that show yesterday, this will still be fresh to the mind. So you'll be good.
Right. It's funny. I'm laying in bed this morning and I'm thinking about what my keys to victory would be. I'm like, well, we kind of touched on some of them yesterday, but we didn't go super in depth yesterday, and so that's what we're gonna do today. And Ryan's got some good ones here. So let me pull them up here. So first one, I think it's
a staple.
I mean, this is 100%. Like it is a staple, but it is also very, very important. It's what we all want to see after this long layoff. I mean, Notre Dame hasn't played a game in a month, right? And so the first one is start fast offensively to get a lot of these younger players some confidence.
And I think that it's a extreme cliche on this show, obviously, to start fast offensively, because we do that every single keys to victory episode. That's the first one we always talk about.
Right.
But honestly, Vince, they don't listen to us a lot, man. There's a lot of times where they do not start incredibly fast. But I think it's especially important against Oregon State because, one, like you said, there is a little bit of a layoff here, right? There has not been a Notre Dame game in quite a few weeks now at this point. It feels like forever. And I think trying to get into a rhythm early is going to be big for this game. But I think the biggest part of this is that Notre Dame has a new look offense. They're going to be young in certain spots. They are going to have a redshirt freshman starting quarterback starting his first game of his career. You're going to have 2 running backs at the top of the depth chart who are true freshman Jeremiah Love and redshirt freshman Jadarian Price. You're going to have a true freshman starting at left tackle in Charles Jagasaw. I'm still calling him Charles Jagasaw because, Vince, I made this joke the other day. Apparently there's a new pronunciation of his name that he said it for the media like last week. But when he came on the radar, when I first got hired by Irish Breakdown, I literally heard a video of him pronouncing his name.
Yes, I saw the video.
Jagasaw.
I saw the video.
It was with Tom Lemming, and I was like, cool, awesome, cool. I know how to say his name now. Great. But all joking aside, though, you have a true freshman left tackle. You have a redshirt freshman quarterback making his first career start in Steve Angeli. You have a backup true freshman quarterback as well. And Kenny Minchie, if anything happens to Steve Angeli, you're going to be true freshman behind a redshirt freshman. And you have 2 young running backs that are not going to be carrying the load with Audric Estime, not the opting out of the football game. So them being able to get a rhythm early will be huge for this offense, because there is bound to be a couple blunders early. There's bound to be a couple, we always see those plays, coming out of the huddle where maybe things are kind of slow communicated and a guy's in the wrong spot, and then you have to take a late timeout. Like, those things happen, especially with the young players offensively. But Notre Dame kind of being crisp early on, I think settles in Steve Angeli. I think it settles in Charles Jagasaw. I think it gets the running game going. Notre Dame needs to come out, in my opinion, in this game for their best. The best possible outcome is to make your younger players comfortable early on in the football game, especially with a new offensive coordinator, with Gino Guidugli being the guy that's going to be calling plays in this football game until Mike Denbrock is, he's officially the new offensive coordinator at Notre Dame, but he's not going to be coaching in this football game, obviously. So with all those changing of the parts, young players playing, I think trying to establish some type of rhythm early is incredibly important for this Notre Dame offense.
Well, and when you look at this particular key and it start fast, but then in parentheses, you had get the younger players' confidence. To me, the most important piece of that is the last part. It's to get the younger players' confidence. Even if they don't go down and score a touchdown right off the bat, I want to see an offensive game plan that gets these kids involved, gets them confident. You always talk about, throws for a quarterback to get them in rhythm, short throws and things like that. But I want to see some runs like that too, that gets the offensive line into a rhythm, gets Jeremiah Love into a rhythm. You want to see, some one-on-one wins for some wide receivers on the outside, even if it's just a hitch route or comeback or something along those lines, gets those guys going, gets the quarterback going, gets these young guys into a rhythm. That's, I think, the most important thing. And because normally when I think start fast, Ryan, I think like they got to score. They got to score right away. Now, that would be great. I'm not going to turn down a touchdown on the first drive, obviously, but you want to see a concerted effort by this offensive staff to get these kids involved in the offense, spread the ball around, do some things that is going to be successful, right?
Right.
Let Steve take a shot. You know what I mean? Hey, just get it out of the way. Let him take a shot down the field or play action, whatever the case may be. But you also want to have things that are going to get these guys comfortable with the offense so that as each drive continues, all right, these guys are going to be looking, solid and confident and ready to roll.
I think it's really well said, because I think that because this first one, Vince, this falls mostly on the coaching staff in this one, right?
Absolutely.
We talked about it. It's not the first time Gino Guidugli is going to call a football game on the college level, but it is going to be the first football game he's going to call at the University of Notre Dame in that transition from Jared Parker to obviously the next era of Mike Denbrock. So you are going to need, I think, and this is why you practice, right? This is why you had, these multiple practices in the last couple of weeks. I just want Notre Dame to have a good plan coming into this football game. Because Gino Guidugli is calling plays, he should he should have a very good opinion and very well known as far as what does Steve Angeli do well? What does he bring to the table that we can kind of ease into this contest? And for me, Vince, like the one thing that I've been really impressed with Steve Angeli from the practice reps I've seen and some of the game reps, he throws pretty well on the run, man. He's a pretty good athlete. I think he can move pretty well. I think he's very comfortable moving throwing on the move and making some of those quick decisions on the move. So I'm looking, let's move the pocket a little bit. Let's work off play action, maybe a little RPO game, whatever it is. I think that those things will best get him into rhythm. And then from there, and we'll talk more about the diverse run game, obviously, pretty soon here. But I don't want to see just the Audric plan, Jeremiah Love just running the Audric plan, because Jeremiah Love and Audric Estime are very different football players. I want to see working to the skill sets that you have offensively. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, they are home run hitters. They are guys that can hit the corner and create some big plays. The wide receivers that you have, I think the last couple games especially, Notre Dame did a better job of understanding what does Jaden Greathouse do well? What does Jordan Faison do well? What is these, the wide receivers that you're going to be having in this football game? What do they bring to an offense that we can best take advantage of? And then also, you need to protect your offensive line a little bit, which we'll get into a little bit more. But that's a part of starting fast is let's not just drop back 5 times in a row and just ask Charles Jagasaw, who was kind of raw as a pass protector in high school, to just, to do either a vertical set or a 45-degree set and just you're on an island against their best pass rusher. Like, that's not beneficial to Charles Jagasaw in this football game. So understanding what their strengths are for Gino and this offensive staff, I think is going to be big for putting them in the best possible position that they can be in.
Yep. Nope. Completely agree with that. And I think that's also going to be key, right? Is knowing what these young guys do best and really kind of tailoring the game plan around that. And it's specific to Steve Angeli. There's no doubt about it. Steve Angeli is not Sam Hartman. I mean, if they come out with the exact same game plan that they would have had if Sam Hartman was the quarterback, that's not good coaching. I mean, I'm sorry. That's not good coaching. That's not who Steve Angeli is. As you said, move the pocket, get him out, use his legs. I mean, he's not Ian Book. He's not, Deuce Knight with his legs, right? He's not Riley Leonard with his legs, but his legs can be a part of his game. He's not a statue back there in the pocket, right? So you want to use his legs, whether you actually do some read option. I think that could actually be something that they could take advantage of against this front that Oregon State is going to have. Look, we talked about it yesterday, and we're going to talk about it in our second key. So I don't want to, jump the gun a little bit, but this front is very quick. They're very fast. They're not going to two gap. They're not going to stand there and wait and try to figure out what's going on. They're coming right now. Yep. And so, a little bit of read option could be something that could slow them down, potentially get them, going one way. All of a sudden Notre Dame is going the other because it's built into the play, whether it's handing to the running back going one way and the quarterback keeping it, that whatever the case may be, you can make them wrong with the way that they slant and move, right? And so there's a lot of things you can do with Steve Angeli that you might not have done with Sam Hartman. So it's going to look different, I would imagine, offensively, and that is going to play to the strengths of Steve Angeli. And that's going to be really an important piece of this, right? If I had, Gino Guidugli or one of the offensive staff sitting in my room right here, I've been like, hey, don't do it like Sam Hartman did it. You know what I mean?
And that's what makes a good offensive staff and a good play caller, in my opinion. I have no idea if Gino Guidugli is a good play caller or not, but because you're right. Steve Angeli is not Sam Hartman, and Sam Hartman is also not Steve Angeli. Like, they're completely different football players.
Right.
I'm just not trying to stick a round peg into a square hole in this football game.
Yep.
What you've had weeks to prepare now, knowing that Sam Hartman wasn't going to play and knowing that Steve Angeli was going to be your guy, at least to start this football game. So working to his strengths, working to the rest of the team's strengths. That's why, look, guys, I know that there's, a couple opt-outs were a little bit later, and you're like, oh man, maybe there's a chance. People were like, maybe there's a chance Aldrich Estime plays or this guy plays. Trust me, the staff knew that those guys that were opting out were going to opt out a couple weeks before the general public officially knew. They knew that was in the works. So with that knowledge, this is a game where it's almost like preseason practice, Vince, to a degree. Like that first game, you've had whole offseason, several weeks to design this offense and to make it look the way you want. And typically, teams come out and they look pretty good in the first game offensively, because it's like, there might be some kinks in the armor a little bit, some chinks in the armor, but ultimately they had a very good plan coming in because they had weeks and weeks and weeks to make this plan, to create it. And I think Notre Dame has a chance to come out with a really good plan because they've had weeks and they know, again, Gino Guidugli knows Steve Angeli better than just about anybody.
I would
He's
say
worked
better
with
than
him
anybody,
all year. So knowing what he does well, asking him what to do, and then also you have Dylan McCullough, who I imagine will be pretty heavily involved in this game planning, right? Like, he knows who Jeremiah Love is. He knows who Jadarian Price is. I think that I'm just looking for a collaborative effort offensively to be able to start fast, because I think that is going to be not necessarily needed. I don't think needed's the right word, because Notre Dame could come out slow and still win this football game. That's very possible. But if you start fast, then we're going to be in the middle of the third quarter, Vince, being like, all right, can we get to this post-game show because they're blowing the doors off this team? I mean, that's a possible scenario that we run
Absolutely.
into.
I hate to say it, and I it's not prediction time yet, obviously, but I feel like this game could end up being boring. I mean, but for all the right reasons as a Notre Dame fan, and we'll get to all of that, moving forward. But I do feel like this game is going to feel like it's going to take forever in the second half. That's just how I see this one going. I'm sorry. As I look deeper and deeper, and I'm actually, this is not the way I usually look at a game. I'm looking for reasons to be wrong on this. Like, I'm looking for reasons for Oregon State to make this a football game and potentially win this football game. It's just, it's tough to see.
What's funny, Vince, is that Brian, just for people that out there that are wondering, Brian texted us all, I think it was on, was it last Friday or Saturday, something like that, for our score predictions for both Notre Dame and the other games that we pick here in Irish Breakdown. And honestly, I'm already like a few days removed from me sending it, because I ended up sending it on Saturday, I believe. The closer I get to this football game, the more positive I have become I think Notre Dame could just beat this team bad. Like, I think it's possible that they could end up really just kind of boat racing this team a little bit. So the score prediction that you're going to see on Irish Breakdown was me in that little period of, because this happens before every pick, of, I think Notre Dame could do this really well. But also, this other, the team that does this well and this well. And then also after that, I think Fuaga, the offensive tackle for Oregon State, officially opted out. It found out that Joshua Gray, the left tackle, isn't playing. And some things have just changed a little bit. So I actually think that it could be a little bit more of a lopsided victory in Notre Dame's favor than what I ended up picking at Irish Breakdown. I actually might have to text Brian and be like, hey, can I change my score prediction a little bit? Just a little bit. But regardless, I agree with you, is that I think that Notre Dame has the opportunity to do that. But if the only way that they do that, in my opinion, is if they start fast. So they come out and they're just guns blazing, and they have a concerted effort, and they are in a good rhythm early. I think that's the way that they do it.
Completely agree. I completely agree. So we've kind of danced around point number 2 for a little while. So let's just jump into it. Ryan, point number 2, dominate up front and a diverse run game. And we're talking offense here. So it's dominating up front with this kind of a new offensive line. Right? It's a new offensive line. You're going to have one offensive lineman that started the season in this game, and that's left guard Pat Coogan. And so talk to me about what that means in your eyes, being a dominant up front when you've got a lot of new pieces and a lot of moving parts here.
I think there's 2 ways that I looked at this, and I threw, to your kind of your introduction there, I threw Notre Dame playing well up front together with having a really good rushing attack and plan as a rushing team this game. Because I think that's really what it's going to come down to, is if Notre Dame is able to run this football, the football well against Oregon State, that's how they dominate this team. Yeah. Because I just don't think that Notre Dame wants to become a one-dimensional throwing team against Oregon State, because I just don't think that's advantageous for them, decisively winning. I mean, again, you could still win, I think, but it's not going to be quite as easy if it's that in that direction. So it's twofold, Vince. It's a transition period up front. It is. People that are down on Joe Rudolph, which I think got better at the end of the season for some people, because they were like, okay, we saw Ashton Craig show growth his last couple games of the season. Joe Alt was great all year. We saw Billy Schrouf get an opportunity and play really good football down the stretch, and you start feeling a little bit better. Because for me, Vince, like I mostly grade coaching, the ability as a coach by what the young players start to show, right? Because they're the baseline, and you build upon it. They're the foundation. They're really like, you're trying to build a foundation and build up from there, from it. So down the stretch, seeing Ashton Craig play well, Billy Schrouf play well, that gives me some hope that Joe Rudolph's going to be that guy at Notre Dame. I think the jury's still a little bit out in that regard, but this is the ultimate test for Joe Rudolph, because you now have a true freshman at left tackle. You have a redshirt freshman at center. You have a redshirt freshman at right guard, and Tosh Baker might start right tackle, but there's not it's up in the air as far as like maybe we'll see Tosh Baker as well, who's a young cat as well. So I think that you have the opportunity to see just how much these young players have grown under Joe Rudolph in a year. Like, how prepared is Charles Jagasaw to play left tackle at the University of Notre Dame? How prepared, if Emil Wagner is in the football game, is he to play high-level football at the University of Notre Dame against a good Oregon State defense? So I think first and foremost, I want to see how things are developing up front, and I want to see that group come out, and they're going to make mistakes. They always are, especially with a first-time starter at left tackle and a young team, a young, inexperienced offensive line overall. But I want to see them play hard, man. Like, I want to see them physically dominate, because guess what? Charles Jagusah, even if he's not assignment sound all the time, he's still going to have some big-time moments because he's just so athletic and so strong and so powerful. So I want to see that first and foremost. The second part goes back to the offensive game plan perspective, is that I think that, could you bludgeon this team because you're just bigger than them and stronger than them? Yes, possibly. But you know what really is going to be debilitating to a Oregon State team? If you have a really diverse run plan that helps your offensive line and you're running inside zone, outside zone, pin and pull, a little bit of counter, like just kind of mixing things up and keeping a good defense, just kind of off their a little bit out of sync early on in this football game and just throughout this football game as well. So I think it's going to come down to, if the offensive line overall dominates in this football game and they're able to create movement and they're able to run the football, Vince, Notre Dame wins this one big. I think that might actually be the biggest key to this football game, in my opinion. Sure. But overall, I think that is probably the biggest question mark offensively. I personally, I don't know if you agree with this. I would love to hear if you do or not, but Steve Angeli, I think Steve's going to be fine. Like, I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be a good and solid in this football game. I actually have a pretty, I'm not worried as much about Steve Angeli. The part that I'm worried about this offense overall is, how will the offensive line mesh with so many new faces and so much inexperience? Because if they dominate this football game offensive line-wise, it's not going to be a contest, in my opinion.
No.
But if there's some communication errors, if there's guys falling off of blocks, if there's just some kind of those little moments of just not fully being confident in what you're doing, then I think that's where Oregon State can create a lot of negatives, which is kind of what they're built off of defensively.
Completely agree. Steve Angeli is the least of my worries from an offensive standpoint in this game, because the way I see this game playing out, Steve Angeli doesn't have to be, whoever. Like, name your quarterback that's like a transcendent quarterback, right? He doesn't need to be Caleb Williams. He doesn't need to be Drake May. He doesn't need to be whatever, right? He just needs to steer the ship in the right direction and get the ball out and where it needs to go. And a lot of time that's going to be, in the belly of Jeremiah Love and Jabron Payne. I mean, and Jadarian Price, right? I mean, that's what it's going to be. And so look, Steve Angeli is going to be just fine in this game. Steve Angeli, to me, and I do not want this to come off as a pick on Steve Angeli type of comment, but Steve Angeli can win you a bunch of games. I feel very similar about Steve Angeli, even more so about Steve than I did about Drew Pine. Drew Pine can win you a bunch of games. He can win you games, right?
I agree.
But is he a championship level quarterback? That's the question, because if you're looking for a starter at Notre Dame, you want a championship level quarterback. I'm not sure that's Steve. This is not a championship level team that Notre Dame is going up against. This is Oregon State, and a depleted Oregon State at that, right?
Yep.
And so,
without their head coach, without some of their top players,
without blank, right? You can fill in the blank without, I mean, they're without a lot, right? From coaching to players. And so I think you can win a lot of games with Steve Angeli. This is one of those games you can win with Steve Angeli. Now, if he goes out there and throws like 3 interceptions and fumbles the ball and does all that, he can lose you a game. And
you can lose because of Steve Angeli, 100%.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great distinction, because I think that people think that it's look, the game manager moniker that people throw around, I think it's overused for one. I don't think it's used correctly all the time either. For me, from what I've seen of Steve, I think you could win with Steve Angeli. Are you always going to win because of Steve Angeli, though? That's the difference between a game manager and a game elevator. And those are the types of guys. There is a reality in this football game where Steve Angeli throws for $180, a touchdown or two, doesn't turn the football over, and Notre Dame kills Oregon State. There's a reality of that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I just don't think that there's a big of a reality that he throws for 350 and 4 touchdowns, and that's how you win the football game. But to your point, Vince, he is, though, and that's the part of the game manager thing. Game manager can lose you a football game, though, right? They can lose you a football game.
Right.
But in the most part, for the positive aspect of everything, if everything is good around Steve, I think Steve can make all the plays he needs to make.
Yep.
Cool. We're good there. But that's why this second key is so important to me, is that the offensive line is going to dictate how good Steve Angeli is in this football game, in my opinion. If the run game is good, you're able to establish the line of scrimmage, and you keep Steve Angeli in rhythm and just kind of just doing his job on a snap-to-snap basis, then he's going to be successful.
Right.
But it was successful because everything around him was good. And I think that's the big key for me.
Right. And look, Steve Angeli is going to take some chances in this game. And
sure. And I want him to.
Yeah, I want him to as well. The coaches may not want him to take the kind of chances he's going to take, because he's going to try to squeeze the ball into some tight windows. He's going to do some different things. And you hope that kind of a thing does not come back to bite you if you're a Notre Dame fan, obviously. But as long as those kinds of plays don't hurt him, he's going to be just fine. I think the stat line that you came up with was like 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, maybe, 40 yards on the ground, that kind of a deal. Like, that's the stat line I kind of anticipate being the case. And then you add 2 or 3 more rushing touchdowns and you're looking at a blowout. Like that's how I see this game going. And you could even potentially throw in a defensive touchdown in there too. Right. And so that's how I see this thing going. But it all starts up front, as you said, because we kind of went on a tangent on Steve Angeli, but it starts up front with this offensive line. Are they going to give Steve Angeli the time to make these throws? Are they going to create holes for the running backs who are also inexperienced in the lead role, right? They've toted the rock all season. All 4 guys have gotten the ball. All 4 guys have gotten into the end zone. All 4 guys we know can make plays, right? But none of that, it's all been in an assist to Audric Estime, and he's not going to be there. And so the run game is going to look different let me back up. The run game should look different than it has all season, because none of these guys are Audric Estime. The Audric Estime lookalike is in the 24 class, and he'll be here. He'll be here in a little while, but he's
listed
not
at 225 pounds already.
Right.
Against Keidron Young, and I don't know if you've seen pictures of him, man. He doesn't look that big, really. Like I don't know, man. Like he could be one of those guys that's like 235 and just still looks just athletic and not big, right? You remember, like Jonas Gray was one of those guys at Notre Dame where I looked at Jonas Gray and I was like, he's a good, solidly built guy. But then it's like he shows up to the pro day or the combine or wherever the heck he was at that year, and he's like 235. I'm like, geez, man, where are you keeping all that weight at? Like, that's insane. Right. So he's one of those guys, man. Keidron Young's going to be a good one.
Yes, they will be able to replace Audric Estime with Keidron Young as far as the body type, the style, the run style, that kind of a thing. But he's not on the roster for the Sun Bowl. So you're going to see a different style of running. And so what does that look like for Notre Dame? You're going to see some outside runs. You're going to see some zone. You're going to see some duo. You're going to see all of these different things, but it needs to be fresh. It can't just be the same thing over and over, because Oregon State can shut that down. They are good enough up front to shut down a one-dimensional run game. And so you can't be one-dimensional. And the other thing is, don't treat, Jeremiah Love like Audric Estime. They're just not, like, there's been times where they're just slamming, guys up the middle.
Jeremiah's fault, man. It was Jeremiah's fault. The first couple games, Vince, he had a couple runs where you're like, he's run through arm tackles. He's getting downhill. And then they were like, we're just keep doing that. It's like, no, don't keep doing that. Don't. Now teams know that they can do that. Do something else and then come back to that when you feel like it. Like that's where diversity is created, when a team knows that you have the ability to do this, this, and this. So I'm going to be able to do all of that and be able to counter off of it. That's where diversity comes from.
Correct. And, when they start bringing that overhang player on the outside, then you can bust it up the middle, right? Because you've been gashing them on the outside. So you have to, make those adjustments in game, at halftime, whatever the case may be. And don't, number seven's not walking through that door, right? He's not going to be in the backfield. Okay. So you've got to adjust. You've got a lot of talent in that running back room, but you still have to adjust. And you also have to be very wary of what this offensive line can do. They are more fleet of foot than the starting offensive line that was in there at the beginning of the season, I think, especially overall, in the interior, overall. Yeah. Right. Yep. And so what kind of things are you going to want to do? Are you going to want to do a little bit more pin and pull? Are you going to want to, do a little more double and climb, things like that, because these guys can get to where they need to go a little bit quicker, right?
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they adapt to the 4 new faces, essentially, from the beginning of the season. And so
it's funny, man. It's crazy.
I know, right? We got 4 new offensive linemen, and the 5th is somebody we didn't realize was going to start in the first place. So,
yes. If I told you before fall camp that the offensive, well, actually, I think Coogan was working with the first team in spring practice a little bit, right? If I told you before spring practice, if I told you before spring practice, I'm just going to Joe because I do another podcast with Joe, Vince. If I told you before spring practice of this year that the starting offensive line was going to be Charles Jagasaw, Pat Coogan, Ashton Craig, Billy Schrouth, and either Tosh Baker or Emil Wagner, you would have said I was
cuckoo
an
for
idiot,
Cocoa Puffs,
on drugs, drinking a lot. I don't know, whatever it would have been, but it did not sound like a reality. The only one that would have been reasonable before spring ball last year was, Billy Schrouth.
Billy Schrouth.
Start. I could see that. Yeah. It's funny.
Exactly. He would have been the only one. I'm like, okay, got that one. But what about the other 4? Are you crazy? Like, yeah, 100%. So, yeah. So it's going to be that is a key though, right? That's why it's on this list, because there are so many question marks about what this run game is going to look like. Do they have the ability to dominate up front? Yeah, they do.
They do.
But
physically,
this is going to be on the coaching staff to make sure they put these guys in the best position to be successful.
Agree.
All right. Third key to this one. And this one will dovetail off of our Steve Angeli conversation and making him confident and all of that. And it's create plays after the catch.
And I don't think Notre Dame's done enough of this year. They've done some of it. I mean, we've seen some guys break some bit long runs. Like, I mean, Jaden Greathouse had a big one, obviously early in the year over an over route. We've seen Jordan Faison do this a little bit after the catch. But I think for me, you want Steve to be really in rhythm and be able to go from 1 to 2, right? Like, I'm not doing a bunch of full field reads with Steve Angeli in his first ever start. That's not, I'm not asking him to go 1, 2, 3 and then backside. Like, no, not in this game. Not in this game. 1, 2, be an athlete, right? It. Like 1, 2, be an athlete. That's the reads for Steve in this game if I was the offense coordinator. So in that sense, Vince, there's going to be some plays where you're probably getting the ball out quick and you're probably going to get guys in a little bit of space as far as like, maybe you're going to throw just a quick speed out or you're maybe going to throw a bubble screen, whatever it is. You need Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, maybe some Jaden Thomas, hopefully some Deion Colsey, whatever. You need some of those guys to create some plays after the catch in this game. Yeah. Don't ask Steve to do 5, 7-step drops and just work vertically and create big plays that way all the time. Should there be some mixed in there? Of course, because I'm a big fan of diversity. But overall, and we don't have to labor on this point too long, is that you have to make things easy for Steve in this game. And that's on the wide receivers. Jordan Faison, quick screen, maybe just quick bubble, get it out to him fast. Let him create something after the catch and make a big play. Jaden Greathouse, over route after the catch, make a big play. One of the tight ends, whether it is Eli Raridan or it's hopefully Cooper Flanagan or whoever, make something happen after the catch. Running backs, maybe Jeremiah Love gets involved on a little slide or a screen or maybe he runs some type of bubble. Like, I don't know, but regardless, let your athletes be athletes and make some plays after the catch, because I really think that you want to get the ball out of Steve's hands quick in this football game. You're not asking him to go through a full field read type of situation. Hopefully the wide receivers, the running backs, the tight ends, all included in this one, not just catch at 8 and you're down at 9. Catch at 8, create a 20-yard gain. Just some of that hidden yardage that we see in football games. I mean, if you watch the San Francisco 49ers this year, the yard per completion and the yard per attempt average on Brock Purdy has been pretty sensational, right?
Yeah.
But if you watch the game, the yard per target isn't crazy. Like, his ADOT's not nuts. It's that Debo does things after the catch. George Kittle makes plays after the catch. Those guys make a lot of big-time plays, and I think for me, I want to see that out of Notre Dame a little bit on Friday. I want to see Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, those younger guys be able to create make some easy plays for Steve and create some hidden yardage. That's what I'll be watching.
Right. No, absolutely. And again, you want to talk about ways to get a young quarterback, confidence. It's those chunk type plays, right? It's easy throws that create first downs. It's easy throws that create big plays. It's guys making plays for the quarterback where he isn't just standing back there trying to squeeze it into tight windows, and all of those different things. And I think, plays after the catch are going to be crucial in this game, whether it's off play action, whether it's a tunnel screen, something along don't be surprised if the screen game is a legit part of this offense in this game, because Steve Angeli's a smart kid. He can throw a screen. He can read when to throw the bubble, things of that nature. I could very well see that being a staple in this offense on Friday, because it is, and it also plays into the hand of these receivers, right? Jordan Faison is like a sprite, just like, darting around back in there. You know what I mean? He can make plays in space, right? And he can make guys miss in space. Jaden Greathouse is that kind of guy. KK Smith is that kind of a guy, right? You've got a lot of guys that can do that. And then you've got your big bodies in Colsey and Thomas that can do the back shoulders and things like that. And you want to talk about, opportunities for plays after the catch or easy throws for the quarterback. Back shoulder is an easy throw for a quarterback. That's a staple throw now in the arsenal of a quarterback in 2023, is that back shoulder catch, or back shoulder throw, excuse me. And Jaden Thomas is really good at that. You're going to see some of that, right?
Jaden Greathouse can do it. Young Colsey can do it. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
And those are low, percentage or high percentage, low risk type throws, because either your guy's going to catch or it's going to go out of bounds, right?
Yes.
If it's thrown correctly. And so, that's where I like what I think they're going to do with Steve Angeli, and allow some of these playmakers to just go out and make plays, which I could see definitely being the case. I really like this key because, we talked about knowing what your guys can do and emphasizing what these young guys can do. A lot of these guys can make plays with the ball in their hands. It's not just a catch and go down. It's a catch and go. And so I love this one.
Yep. And again, it goes back to the offensive line conversation. You need to make things easy for Steve. And I think that's the biggest key. The last one, Vince, and then I know we'll get over to the defense, is quite simple. When you are a young team at quarterback, on offensive line in certain spots, at running back, at offensive coordinator, efficiency is usually kind of cut a little bit, as far as like how, just generally speaking, from a snap to snap or drive to drive basis, you're being an efficient team. The ability to run the football, high percentage throws, finishing drives is the last key that I had, because I think that Notre Dame, that's the thing that worries me a little bit in this game, is that you are able to just move up and down the field on this Oregon State team, but then you either have to settle for field goals, or you throw an interception in the red zone, or you fumble the football, whatever it might be. You have to finish drives in this football game, because it's still a good Oregon State team. I know their secondary has been a little depleted, but it's a good defense for Oregon State. Notre Dame, I think, is going to be able to move the football. Are they able to move the football and be efficient in the red zone, finish drives? If they are, again, then I think it could be a long day for the Beavers. But if they aren't, then that's how this team stays in the football game. And maybe it's a one-score game in the fourth quarter that can go either way, or a tie football game. So if Notre Dame needs to be able to finish off their drives, because I think they're going to move the ball well, but anytime you have a young quarterback, young skill position, and a young offensive coordinator, I do have a little bit of hesitation as far as, are they able to punch the ball in the end zone, in the red zone, and finish off these types of key drives?
Yeah, I completely agree. And, we talk about finishing drives, right? And generally finishing drives is with touchdowns. Okay.
Yes.
I'm actually okay with finishing drives with field goals. Not all of them, obviously, but I would say finish drives with points. Because again, I do think points are going to be at a premium for the Oregon State offense. And normally I wouldn't say field goals are going to win you games, but I think in this game, field goals can win you this game. And again, not all field goals. Like, I don't want a field goal after every drive. That's going to be disappointing. Okay. But finish with points. let's take Schrader's leg out for a drive because you know you can hit these deep ones with him. So depending on how deep you get into the opponent's territory, finish with a field goal. Like I'm
Leg,
actually
baby. Robo leg.
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, like I'm okay with finishing with field goals, and it's not because I am pro field goal kicker and all that kind of stuff. But I think in this particular game, Oregon State's gonna have a tough time scoring the football. So if you can score points after every offensive drive, I think it's really going to benefit Notre Dame from a confidence level and from a scoreboard level, because I think this defense is going to be on point all day.
I think the most debilitating thing for this Notre Dame team is turnovers in this football game. Like that's the one where you just kind of get a little bit worried, especially because I think you make a good point, Vince. What's the old adage? You want to end every offensive possession with a kick, because sometimes punting is not the worst thing in the world, right?
Absolutely.
The worst thing in the world is turning the football over and potentially giving a team short fields and losing momentum. That is the worst possible type of situation. So I think if Notre Dame, as long as they stay on schedule and they don't shoot themselves in the foot and they end drives positively, I think Notre Dame will be just fine in this football game, for sure.
Yep, absolutely agree. So let's go over them again. Number 1, start fast. Get your younger guys some confidence. Number 2, dominate up front. Have a diverse run game. Number 3, create plays after the catch. And number 4, finish drives. So those are our offensive keys, or I should say those are Ryan's offensive keys to an Irish victory. And so with that, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share with your family and friends. We'll be right back with part number 2, and that's defensive keys to an Irish victory. All right, Ryan, let's jump over to the quote-unquote experienced side of the football for Notre Dame, and that is the defensive side, right? And so the defensive side, we've got keys to an Irish victory. We kind of touched on this a little bit yesterday, but I really like what you came up with here on the defensive side of the ball. So let's just jump right in with both feet.
Yep.
Shut down the run game is number 1.
Vince, we talked about it in the first section of this podcast, but the one part of the game that gets me worried for Notre Dame on offense is that maybe the offensive line doesn't gel well, and that's going to kind of stunt the offensive production for Notre Dame. I think on Oregon State side, though, that's also the biggest concern for them is that you are without 3 starting offensive linemen in this game. You lost 3 starters, and 2 of them are NFL football players. Like you have lost Talise Fuaga at right tackle, who I think is potentially going to be a first-round pick, if not a very early second-round pick. You have also lost, who's also 6'6", 335 pounds, by the way. You know who we wanted Blake Fisher to be, Vince, in his Notre Dame career? That's who Talise Fuaga has been for Oregon State this year. That's what we wanted Blake Fisher to be. And then Joshua Gray at left tackle has just been a good multi-year starter. Not super sexy all the time, but he's just a good mover, good, consistent football player, and he had some third-round NFL draft grades before the season. I'm not too sure how he's been playing overall this year, but I do believe he might have a Senior Bowl invite, if not an East West Shrine Bowl invite, so he's a good player.
And he's injured, right? He didn't opt out.
I just know that he's not playing in the football game, so I'm not 100% sure what the circumstances are there, but I know that he is not playing. And then they have a guard that's not playing as well.
Right.
The positive news for them is that they do have their most experienced offensive lineman in Jake Levengood that is still playing at center. So that is good for Oregon State. But you have 3 starters out for Oregon State and 2 of your best ones overall in the right tackle and the left tackle. So I think Notre Dame has a chance in this one to really affect this game by dominating this makeshift offensive line. There is no Talise Fuaga. There is no Joshua Gray. The edge position for Notre Dame, I think, is going to be big in this football game. Javante JeanBaptiste is playing. Can you get production out of guys like Jordan Botelho and Joshua Burnham? I mean, if you are able to, then I think that you have a chance to really just stunt this offensive production from Oregon State in general. You need to, when you're facing against an offensive line that is inexperienced and just, replacing so many quality starters, you have to beat them up. Like you have to beat them up front. I was talking to Brian earlier, Vince. I don't know if he told you this, but so Oregon State before this bowl game was one of the better and bigger offensive lines in all of college football. Again, I said 6'6", 335, 6'4", 305 on the left side, 6'3", 315. With the injuries now, they're like 280 something, 290
Ooh.
something across the board. They are a small. I think the biggest guy on their depth chart right now is 296 pounds with the players that have been either injured or opted out of this football game. So they went from a very big and talented offensive line to a less talented and small offensive line very quickly. So guys like Howard Cross, Riley Mills, the edge position, Gabriel Rubio, Jason Onye for whatever snaps he gets. You need to dominate this football game. Like there can't be any question about did the Notre Dame defensive line get the better of the Oregon State offensive line? The answer needs to be an emphatic yes, they did.
Yeah, I mean that's what is Notre Dame good at, right? They're generally good at pushing around smaller offensive linemen. I mean they will have the advantage here. There's no doubt about that. And you talk about the lack of opt-outs on the defensive side, especially up front, right? I mean this is Notre Dame's front that they've had all year. And, with the exception of Nana Sofa-Mensah, who is a rotation guy at end. But other than that, this is who Notre Dame has been all year. And they've been making plays up front all year. And then you've got a depleted offensive line. I mean, you could almost say a lot of the things that we said for Notre Dame's offense, you could say it for Oregon State's offense, right? I mean, they've got an inexperienced
Yes.
quarterback. They've got a patchwork offensive line. Their best running back is out. So it's like, what is it going to look like from the rest of their running back? I mean, a lot of similarities here offensively for both teams. And so what is this team going to want to do when you've got an inexperienced quarterback? It's run the football. I mean, they're going to want to try to run the football. And if you're Notre Dame, you want them to try to run the football so that you can shut it down and force their quarterback to beat you. And I guarantee you that's what Oregon State's plan is defensively against Notre Dame's offense. It's shut down the run game and force Steve Angeli to beat you with his arm, right?
Sure.
So who do you have more confidence in? Gulbranson or Angeli? Like that's, I mean, it's kind of what it comes down to a degree. Now,
sure.
I will also say it's depth versus depth. And I would very confidently say I like Notre Dame's depth versus Oregon State's depth. Right. And then you talk about coaches and all of that. I mean, that's a different conversation, but for just talking X's and O's, right. And the face of it. Okay.
Yep.
It's very similar. It's very, very similar. And so what does Notre Dame want to do? They got to shut down this run game and force Gulbranson, who hasn't started a game since 2022, to beat you with his arm.
Well, Vince, I think that the depth piece is very important. I'm glad that you hit on that because why does everyone in the recruiting world fall in love with blue chip ratio and the depth of a class? It's for these situations. When you don't have a Joe Alt, for instance, not many teams just can go Charles Jagasaw, 6'7", 330 pounds, former 5-star. You're playing in that spot. Like it's not. All due respect to Oregon State, they don't recruit the way that Notre Dame does. So whoever's filling in for Joshua Gray and Talise Fuaga, I feel very confidently that Charles Jagasaw is probably a better option than whoever they have filling in for their offensive tackles. So I think I feel better about Notre Dame being able to be sustainable offensively and be able to be explosive offensively and efficient offensively because they do have just kind of a deeper cupboard of very talented football players. Oregon State, on the other hand, it's just not going to be quite as good or quite as deep as what Notre Dame's cupboard is going to be. So I think Notre Dame has a chance to dominate in this one. And they have to, because what is a couple of the biggest decisions that Notre Dame has already had for the 2024 season? Howard Cross and Riley Mills coming back, man. That was huge.
Yeah, it was.
And another big one for the bowl game was Javante Jean-Baptiste saying, like, I'm going to play. I'm going to play in this football game. I don't care if I have an East-West Shrine invite. Like, I'm going to play in this game. So Notre Dame should be experienced and physical up front defensively. And for an undersized, inexperienced offensive line for Oregon State outside of Jake Levengood at center, Notre Dame needs to emphatically say that is a matchup we're going to win this week.
I'm going hard left-hand turn here. But I haven't talked to you about this. I think I said something to Sean Stiers. Do you think Javante Jean-Baptiste is playing strictly out of spite because of people on Twitter?
Partly. I mean, a little bit. Like he does give me those vibes of like maybe he's that type of guy, but also, I mean, I respect it though, Vince. I do.
Oh yeah,
because
me too.
Javante JeanBaptiste is a borderline draftable player. He might go in the 6th or 7th round. He's not the
Right.
big time, like he's not Joe Alt, for instance,
Right.
right? Where he's going to go top 5 to 10 overall in the 2024 NFL draft. So I do think that Javante JeanBaptiste still has the opportunity to put good tape out there.
Sure.
You put good tape against Oregon State. You have a good performance in the East-West Shrine game. Maybe you get a combine invite and you do better than people anticipate you doing there. So I think it's partly, he just – I don't think guys opting out when you are borderline draftable players makes a whole lot of sense overall. But would it be surprising if the last bump to that decision was, you know what? There's these false reports about me. I'm going to say, like, you guys are trolls and get the heck out of here. I mean, it's possible, man. It really is.
Oh, I just wanted to get your take on that because I fully, like, when that original report came out and he retweeted with like a question mark and then when he said he was going to play and he's like, my sources say I'm going to play, like that was like, oh, he won the internet.
He's a G, man. One of the easily the most underrated addition Notre Dame made this offseason from the portal. I mean, easily the most underrated. What a blessing he was. He came in and he worked his tail off and he saw it all the way through to the end, man. So big shout out to Javante JeanBaptiste. No doubt about that.
Yeah, he is. You say underrated. I think that's a great way to put it. But like when he came in, it was like, okay, depth piece, that's great. And he just exceeded every expectation I ever had for him coming in over from Ohio State. I mean, it was awesome.
To be honest with you, I thought that there was a world where before the season that Javante JeanBaptiste by the end of the year was maybe just a situational pass rusher and maybe a couple of the young big ends kind of assumed a bigger role. But Javante was down the stretch of the year arguably their best defensive lineman at times. Like he played that well. Guy. He was a really good player.
I agree. He was that guy. And he is one that I'm sad to see go. I wish he had another year of eligibility that he could stick around for another year because A, I think he would. And B, it would make this defensive line just that much better. But
Javante JeanBaptiste and RJ Oben next year would be a pretty dang good tandem of defensive ends. Yes,
just saying. I'm just saying. So,
yep.
All right, let's move on to number 2 on the list defensively. And we kind of touched on this a little bit because I didn't read ahead, and that's on me. But it is make Oregon State one-dimensional offensively. Yes. And I think that goes without saying. You got to shut down their run. You got to make them one-dimensional. I mean, that's just going to play right into the hands of Notre Dame's defense.
Oregon State's a different team offensively than what they have been throughout the year because of the subtractions they've had from their starting lineup. But ultimately, their identity is still built off of running the football because they do have a good running back still. I mean, even without Damian Martinez, they have Deshaun Fenwick, who was literally the starter last year and was playing good football. Then he got hurt, and then Damian Martinez came in and was like, I can't take that kid off the field. But regardless, he's a starting good running back on the college level, and he has a chance that he could be one of those pesky dudes that just keeps moving the chains, keeps getting solid gains. He's that type of running back. He's 6'2", 230 plus pounds. He's a good player overall as far as college running backs go. And I really think that if you were able to take that run game go, Vince, it comes back to that game manager conversation. Like Branson is a solid overall college football player, probably more of a backup type player and a key backup. But he played in 10 football games in 2022. But he's only played in 1 this year. And if you watch him in 2022, he is, let's be able to run the football well, and then I will make sound decisions. That's what Branson is. He wants to be efficient with the football. He is not a guy that if he has to drop back 30 to 35 times, it's a good thing. Because one, they took your identity away. And 2, he's just not that type of quarterback that's going to be able to be, 28 out of 35 for 370 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, that's just not his game, man. So force the run game to not be able to beat you and make Branson have to be that guy because I just don't think he's that guy. I just really don't.
Yeah, well, and it's going to be tough to be that guy, number one, because of the offensive line that's in front of him, right? I mean, that's just going to be tough. Starting tight end, I believe, is out of this game. Who
he transferred. He's at Michigan State now, Jack Velling. So he's a good player, by the way. Velling's a good player.
This is what I'm saying. So you've taken a pretty sizable weapon away from the passing game for Oregon State. And, the receivers are a decent bunch, right? And like you were
I like Silas Bolden. He's a good player.
Yeah, he's the little guy, right?
Yeah, really little guy.
Yeah. He's the little guy. So, he's going to do a decent job of getting open, but there's only so much one guy is going to be able to do. So
Right.
I think you talk about the weapons that are around him, and you talk about the protection that he may or may not get. And then you talk about his talent level and all of
Yes.
those things. If you're Notre Dame, you want to make them one-dimensional so that it forces them to try to throw the football and do those kinds of things. So I think
Agreed.
that's a huge key in this game, because this is also a team who throughout the season, they were a run first team. I mean,
Yes.
they were a run first team. That's their identity. That's who they want to be, regardless of who's in the game. With all the opt-outs and injuries and whatever, they want to be a run first team. So you've got to take away what they do best. And what they do best is running the football. So that's
take
another
away their
reason.
identity and their loss, man. Take away
Right.
their identity and their loss. It's just not a team that's built off of being a drop back passing team consistently. It's just not the team.
Yeah.
Even with DJ Uiagalelei, they're
Right.
not that team. That's not how they're built.
Absolutely.
And with Gilbranson at quarterback, comparatively, they're definitely not that team. Definitely not that team that's going to do that.
Right. So their identity is they're going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to run the ball.
I'll say this, Vince. It would have given me a little bit of pause if DJ Uiagalelei transferred, but they still had Aiden Childs at quarterback. I'd be like, they could probably do some of that stuff, right?
Right.
But with this quarterback, who again was relegated to a third stringer behind a true freshman as a second stringer in Aiden Childs, because guys, like we said, he's fine, but he's nothing special. And we know that. He's not a starting caliber quarterback on a Power 5 team consistently. He's a guy that in a bad situation, he can come in and keep the team afloat, which is great.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that player at all. But in this football game where he is the guy, you got to make him still be that guy and not the guy in this one.
This parlays beautifully right into our third point, Ryan.
Sequencing, man.
I mean, I think you did this on purpose. I'm going to give you full credit on this. But if Notre Dame is able to make Oregon State one-dimensional, that means they're going to be dropping back and they're going to be throwing the football. And key number 3 is you have to pressure the quarterback.
Yes. Because I think that he's a player, although he does make good decisions, Vince, if you make the team one-dimensional, you're not going to be able to just work quick game and just be, one-step drops out of the gun or 3-step drop consistently. You're going to have to do some 5 to 7-step drops at times. And I think if Notre Dame's able to get pressure on this kid, he's going to make some mistakes.
Yep.
He's going to take some sacks. He's going to have some errant throws, because I like Silas Bolden a lot, but Jack Velling was the other. Jack Velling's more of the security blankets, right? He was the big tight end that transferred now to Michigan State. They still have guys like Riley Sharp, who's like a solid tight end, right? Like as a backup type player, former defensive end for them. But overall, this team is just not built to be that drop back passing team. If they're able to just really pressure this young man, I think that he's going to make some mistakes, and I think that they are just going to be able to kind of feast on them a little bit. So getting pressure, getting quarterback hits, getting them on the ground occasionally, but more than anything affecting him, I think is going to be big time for this Notre Dame defensive line that is very much intact for the most part.
Well, and you talk about not only the defensive line but also the linebackers, and Jalen Sneed is going to get his first start in this game, and what is one of the things that he does best? It's get after the quarterback. I mean, it's, hey, pin your ears back, go get this kid. I could see them triggering him a decent amount because that is what he does best. I don't really want him in space covering. I want him getting after the quarterback. And so personally, that's what I would have Jalen Sneed doing. And honestly, JD, Jack, they both do a really good job of getting after the quarterback too. And they time their blitzes so much better this year than they did in year one under Al Golden. And so
JD Bertrand was a much better blitzer in 2023 than he was in 2022. I felt like he got stuck on blocks consistently in 2022. He did affect the quarterback a lot more in 2023. So I agree. And then if you start getting also the Drake Bowens in the game at times, the Jay Nosberries, like that's a lot of speed to unleash potentially. So yeah, man, I would blitz. I would heat this kid up as much as possible.
Absolutely. And when it's an obvious pass down, I mean, go get him. I mean, just absolutely go get him and just make him make a play. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? When you blitz, you're taking somebody out of pass coverage. I get that. Make him make that play. Make him make you wrong. And with the athletes that Notre Dame has on defense and the veterans that they have on defense,
with the corners they have too,
exactly.
Like I will take some chances from a blitz perspective because I will take. Although I like Silas Bolden and a couple of the wide receivers they have, I will take Benjamin Morrison covering Silas Bolden any day of the week. I'm confident, even with not first time starters, but with guys that with limited experience starting in Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey, I still feel good about playing a lot of man-to-man coverage in this football game. I feel good about Xavier Watts at times having to come down and playing some man-to-man coverage. Like, you're good there. You are good there.
Right.
So heating this team up and doing a little bit of blitzing out of your man looks, I think would be a very good idea for Notre Dame.
Xavier Watts, baby, he's going to get a sack in this game. You watch.
You think so?
Him.
First career sack?
So.
First career sack?
He's coming after it. I think they're going to get it for him, you know. But no, I think that's a really, really good key. They're going to have to heat this kid up because I'm not sure that he could stand back there in a beautiful pocket and pick you apart. But if he's running for his life and has guys just all over him, you know, just batting the gnats away, that's going to be a really, really tough assignment for this kid. There's no doubt about that.
I'm a huge law of averages guy, Vince, and I would just say that the average, the odds that he would be able to pick you apart are a lot less when he's getting blitzed. So yes, I'm a big law of averages guy for sure.
I would agree with that. Yep. And so again, kind of playing into what we just talked about, when you blitz, you open up opportunities for explosive plays against you. And so the final key on the defensive side is you have to limit the explosive plays. Obviously, that means on the ground. It means through the air. It just means chunk plays. You can't allow Oregon State to be, because you're going to back them into a corner. I mean, defensively, they're going to be backed into a corner. You can't let them off the hook with explosive chunk plays.
Yeah, I mean, in the run game, just kind of begin the conversation. Just be in the right gap. Be as Simon sounds. You have experienced linebackers, even with Jack Kaiser moving inside the will. You have JD, you have Jack that have played a ton of football. Just be in the right gap. Safeties, be in the right run fits. I mean, you have DJ Brown and Xavier Watts that have played a lot of football now at this point. So stay in the right fits. You'll be fine. Defensive line-wise, you have guys that have been consistently good run defenders this year, and Howard Cross and Riley Mills, Javante JeanBaptiste. You should be good as far as the run fit perspective and trying to limit this run game a little bit. The explosive plays that I'm most not worried about, but like just keeping my attention to, is that when you do have a first-time starting corner that is filling in now for Cam Hart, whether that is Jaden Mickey or Christian Gray in the football game, there is a sophomore and a freshman, so there's a opportunity to maybe there's a miscommunication on a play where you let a guy loose. Maybe one guy's in the right coverage, one guy's in the incorrect coverage, and you let a guy like Silas Bolden just go wide open on a out and up and being able to kind of open up down the sideline. Just don't let explosive plays happen, man. This team is not built off of explosives. Deshaun Fenwick is a churning running back. He's trying to get 4 to 5 a carry, keep the chains moving. Branson is a short, quick game type of quarterback who wants to get the ball out first to second read and keep the chains moving. They're not explosion makers on the offensive side of the football. Don't let them become that in this game. Honestly, Vince, I think the only way that they have a consistent offensive success is if Notre Dame does something stupid, right? Like they're in the wrong position, they miss a tackle, whatever it is. Limit explosive plays, and I just don't think that this offense is going to be sustainable for consistently moving against Notre Dame. I'd be very surprised.
Yep. Nope. I absolutely agree. That's the only way, honestly. And it's not just one explosive play or two explosive plays. They're going to have multiple explosive chunk plays to beat Notre Dame, in my opinion, right? Because they're going to have to lead to scores. I just don't see this offense being able to matriculate the ball down the field, piece by piece, play by play. I don't see that being the case, but you can't let them out of jail with these big chunk plays and the big explosive plays and allow them to score on those types of plays, like a 3rd and long, for example, or you get a sack on first down, it's 2nd and 17, and they just, bust something deep. All they're trying to do is run the ball between the tackles, but you let them get loose for a 25-yard gain and a new set of downs. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of stuff that Notre Dame cannot allow from this Oregon State team. Don't give them confidence. Don't give them the thought that, hey, we can do something against this defense. We can be successful against this defense. Chunk plays leads to confidence, man. And so you don't want to allow that if you're Notre Dame, because again, I just don't see Oregon State being able to sustain, over and over getting yards and points on the board. They're going to have to do it with a big play, and you can't allow it. You just can't allow it.
because they're not built like that. So
Right.
hopefully they're not turning that page against Notre Dame where they become built on that, because that just wouldn't make any
Right.
sense, right? Like DJ Uiagalelei, a lot more of an opportunity to create explosive plays. Damian Martinez at running back, a lot more ability to create explosive plays. Jack
Right.
Velling, a lot more ability to create explosive plays. You still have Silas Bolden, but overall, the guys that could create explosive plays are not going to be playing in this football game. So Notre Dame should be able to limit that well, I believe. And if they do, I just don't think that the offense for Oregon State is going to be able to be in rhythm consistently. I think that's going to really cut down their efficiency big time.
Right. Nope. Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Don't give these guys any confidence that they don't need and that they don't earn for that matter, because explosive plays aren't necessarily plays that are earned by the offense. They're plays that are given up by the defense. That's kind of how I feel about it. So, especially in this particular game. So do not give them any unneeded confidence that they don't need already. So
Kick them while they're down, man. Do not let
that's
them
right,
get
baby.
up. 100%.
That's right. Absolutely agree with that. So that's going to do it for this part of the podcast, the defensive keys to an Irish victory. Don't go anywhere because we will have a mailbag, but we are going to sign off from this part of the podcast. So make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share with your family and friends. Notre Dame's defensive keys to an Irish victory. All right, it's your favorite time of the week, favorite time of the show, people. We're going to hit a mailbag. We're going to answer your questions as best we can. So if you want to get those questions in, make sure that you put MB, put the little mailbox emoji, something so that we see it as it's flying by in the chat. And we'll start, and we will do our best to bring up those questions. So, Ryan, how would you like to do this? Do you want me to bring them up? Do you want?
I can read them.
You want to read them?
Beautiful. Yeah, I can read them. Sure.
All
Bring
right,
them up. I'll read them. Let's do
I'm
that.
going to start at the top. If you see any, just go ahead and star them. I'm going to stay on the other side of
Sounds
things.
good.
All right, here we go. First one from Irish Blooded.
Irish Blooded, more likely to happen. Steve Angeli's first start jitters and less experienced player to have 2 turnovers, or Oregon State 0 touchdowns due to internal turnovers on roster and staff. What's more likely, Vince?
More likely. I don't look for everything that I say negative about Steve Angeli. He's a very confident kid. He's a very confident kid from everything I can gather. I don't think he's going to have jitters. I think he's had 5-6 weeks to get used to the fact that he's the starting quarterback at Notre Dame for this game. And that's the way it's been in practice. That's the way it's been. So I don't think he's going to have a bunch of jitters. I think he's going to go out there with a lot of confidence. I think he's going to play to his standard, to the standard that Notre Dame needs him to play at. So I don't think that's going to be the case. So I guess if I have to choose one over the other, I would say that Oregon State is going to have 0 touchdowns due to internal turnovers of roster and staff.
Yeah, out of those 2 situations, Irish Blooded, I would also go with the Oregon State 0 touchdowns offensively because of a lot of the reasons we talked about. And it's the defections you've had on the offensive line. It's the defection you've had at quarterback, that running back, obviously. Vince, I think it could have changed the equation a little bit if instead of first start jitters leads to 2 turnovers, if it was just has 2 turnovers because he's a first time starting quarterback. Could he just read incorrectly on a play and then throw an interception? For sure. I don't think that I agree though. I don't think it's like built off of jitters though. If you've ever seen Steve Angeli in a practice setting or in a game setting, it's not. He's kind of unflappable a little bit, man. Like he's a very just confident football player. He didn't throw his interception in the one game down the stretch because he had jitters, in my opinion. It was because he didn't see it correctly and he threw to the wrong leverage and he kind of airmailed the pass a little bit. Like that's why he threw it. That had nothing to do with jitters, though, in my opinion. So I think he'll be confident, cool, calm, and collected in this game. Could he have a couple turnovers? It's possible. That's again, that's my fear. That's my fear. But if that's that's my only 2 options, I will go more towards Oregon State not being an incredibly efficient offensive team now.
Absolutely. Because you're right. That is my fear. And we talked about this earlier when we talked about Steve Angeli and what he is and what he could be. Like he's not going to go out and win the game for you, but he could lose the game for you, right? That's what we were talking about earlier. And he could lose the game for you by having 2 turnovers. Maybe one gets returned for a touchdown, or you turn it over in the red zone, or the opposition's red zone, that kind of a thing, leading to a short field, that kind of a situation. He could lose the game for you. I just don't think he's the guy that's going to win the game for you. So the stat line that Ryan gave earlier, it was, 180 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, maybe 40 to 50 yards on the ground, and Notre Dame wins by 3 touchdowns. That's a very, very plausible outcome of this game, in my opinion, right? I would be shocked if he had 4 or 5 touchdowns, 350 yards passing, that kind of I have a hard time seeing that. If it happens, awesome. I just don't know that I see that being the case.
Agreed. So. We see it very similarly. Very similarly.
John Leahy.
John Leahy, thoughts on Al Golden's comments saying Jack Kaiser will move inside? It was expected, Vince. I mean, he's going to be starting at will linebacker. So, John, in Notre Dame's system, which is a 4-2-5, you technically have 2 inside linebackers with how it is schematically created, right? So you have a middle linebacker who is the strong side inside linebacker, and you have the will linebacker, which is the weak side inside linebacker in a 4-2-5. 4-3 in a more of a 4-3 look, that will technically be an outside linebacker spot. But in Notre Dame's 4-2-5, which will either be a 4-2-5 with a rover or 4-2-5 nickel with a nickel back, a will linebacker is an inside linebacker position. So I'm not surprised at all. We actually saw Jack Kaiser play a little bit of will this year. He's played that at times overall. And I think that they just want to get the experience on the inside because now they get to play a guy like Jalen Sneed in a more of a rover role. So, yeah. So he's still J.D. Bertrand at Mike, Jack Kaiser at will, and Jalen Sneed at rover to start, it seems.
Right. Yeah, he's not – I don't see Jack Kaiser moving to Mike, if that's what everybody's fear was about him moving inside. I don't see that.
Especially not for this game. Not for this game.
Well, yeah, because J.D. Bertrand is obviously in this game. So, I mean, he's not going to unseat captain. That's not obviously going to happen. And so – I think Jack Kaiser could be extremely successful at will if that ends up being his starting spot next year or the spot that he plays the most next year. I could see him being extremely successful there. He's not a Mike linebacker. He's not big enough to be a Mike linebacker. I don't want him to be a Mike linebacker. Nobody does. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I think, he's going to be a will that is technically inside. And I think everybody's okay with that.
Yeah, it would be a very interesting decision if they were moving to Mike this offseason, and I would not be very happy about it because that would also be not only are you putting a guy that's not in his best position, in my opinion, Vince, you would also be blocking guys like Drake Bowen, Kingston Villiamoasa, maybe Nolan Ziegler to be able to get some playing time at Mike, and that's the worst possible outcome, in my opinion.
Right. Nope. Absolutely agree with that.
Irish Blooded with a question. Do you think there is a planned package that Kenny Minchey will come in to play that might be more run-based that is scheduled to happen, not just garbage time reps?
I don't think so, at least based on the comments that we have gotten from Marcus Freeman. I know that there was an offensive coordinator press conference, I believe, yesterday, which I have not heard or seen the outcome of. But I would be surprised if that was the case. Now, Irish Blooded, here's another thing that I do want to throw out there. Kenny Minchey throws a freaking great ball. I would not put Kenny Minchey in the game just to run the football. That is not what I would do. I think he throws the ball better than Steve Angeli. Just from a straight, the way it looks when it comes out of his hand, the ease of
velocity,
throwing, all of that. He throws a better ball. So if I was going to have Kenny Minchey come into the game, it would not be in a run package. It would be, hey, you're going to run the offense while you're out here. Now, with that said, I don't think that's in the plans.
Same. And I mean, yeah, because you don't look, you did the 2 quarterback stuff with Tyler Buckner a couple years ago with Jack Cohn, because Tyler Buckner was a great athlete. Yeah. He could run. He was a very good athlete. Kenny Minchey's a good athlete at the quarterback position in the sense of great pocket ability, maneuverability, extending plays, that type of thing. But he's not a runner necessarily. That's not really his game. So I'm not bringing him in the game to run quarterback power and do zone read a ton or anything like that. He functionally, as far as how you're going to use him, is similar to Steve Angeli. He's still a pocket quarterback. You're still going to move the pocket a little bit. You're going to work play action. Right. Kenny's still functionally similar to Steve as far as how you're going to utilize him. My hope, though, Irish Blooded, is I hope we do see Kenny Minchey in this game. I don't think, because I think Vince is right. I think that the plan now, at least from just kind of reading the tea leaves, is I think that Steve Angeli is going to start this football game, and they're going to ride with Steve. And then hopefully, if it's in Notre Dame's favor in the end, maybe then you get Kenny Minchey some reps. I think that's where the most possible outcome is. But regardless, I hope that Kenny does play in this football game, but I don't think there's a platoon scenario. I don't think there's a rotation thing that's necessarily on the table. I would actually be kind of surprised if they are, because usually when there is a platoon approach, it's because two quarterbacks just have very different skill sets as far as what they can bring to the game. I think they can both do different things. I agree. I would do similar things. I agree that Kenny Minchey can do it at a higher level, but ultimately it's not like I'm going to be running quarterback read and that type of stuff with Kenny. I just don't see that.
Right. That's not, could he do those things? Absolutely. He could do those things. I just don't think that's not what they're going to put him in the game for. You know what I mean? I'm going to pull this one up just because it is apropos to kind of what we're talking about from T-Rex. Okay. So there you go.
Says, why isn't Kenny Minchey starting if he's so good? Why did they go to the portal? I mean, they went to the portal because they saw a guy in the portal in Riley Leonard that they think is really, really good, right? And really, really talented. And a player that they think could possibly be better than Kenny Minchey or CJ Carr or Steve Angeli can be in the year 2024. That doesn't mean that they don't believe in Kenny Minchey, who again is only a true freshman, right? Like we're talking about a kid that is next year is going to be a redshirt freshman. We're not talking about a kid that's a redshirt junior where it's like, dude, if it's now or never, like, why are we stalling here? Why are we doing this? And I understand in the world, the transfer portal, people think about this a little bit differently, but you going to Riley Leonard next year because you think in the year 2024, a senior version of Riley Leonard can be better than a redshirt freshman version of Kenny Minchey. And I think that that's very sound logic. I don't push against that at all. I think it makes a lot of sense. As long as Riley Leonard is healthy, I think that he does give you a better chance to be competitive and to compete for a championship in 2024 than Kenny in 2024.
Right. I will also say, I think it's more of an indictment on Steve Angeli than it is on Kenny Minchey. Because Steve Angeli is going to be in the system for 3 years at that point, be a junior, redshirt sophomore, however you want to classify him. They're making this move because they think Riley Leonard will be the best option for 2024. And then I think they're done going to the transfer portal at that point, and they're going to start looking in-house. And they're not ready for Kenny Minchey to take over as a redshirt freshman. They're just and they're not ready for CJ Carr to take over as a true freshman. You know, so I mean, I think, like I said, I think it's more of an indictment on who they think Steve Angeli is versus who they think Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr are. So that's, I think, where the thought process is, in my opinion. This is nothing coming from the coaches. This is how I see it, because I think if you've been in the program for 3 years, you should get your opportunity to start if you think he's the guy. And I don't think they think he's the guy, and that I don't think he's the guy either. That's my personal opinion. Again, you can win a lot of games with Steve Angeli. You can win a lot of games with him. I just don't know if you can win the big games with him. I don't think he's going to win you those games. Hey man, I hope I'm wrong. I mean, if he ends up being the starter, I hope I'm wrong. You know what I mean?
Well, if he ends up being a really good player, then you feel great about the future of the quarterback position, because then you have Kenny Minchey, you have CJ Carr, then you also have Deuce Knight coming in. If Steve Angeli's a dude, then quarterback's not going to be an issue for several years for Notre Dame. So I'm there for
absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And I am obviously here for that as well.
Yes. Brian Hockney. Brian, what's up, man? Where do we stand with Lincoln Cure, 2025 tight end? He's out of the state of Kansas, Goodland, Kansas, I believe. Are we taking 2 tight ends in 2024? Who else is on the board? So I don't know if you meant to say 2025 on the second part there, Brian, but
I'm sure you did,
the 2024 class is solidified at this point. The 23 commits are who's going to be in the 2024 class for Notre Dame. And they obviously just ended up with the 1 tight end and Jack Larson. The plan, to my knowledge, is that Notre Dame is going to push for 2 tight ends in the 2025 class, because they already have James Flanagan committed, who obviously is the son of Jim Flanagan Jr., who was a very good defensive lineman for the University of Notre Dame in the Bryant Young era of Notre Dame football.
I remember him.
2025, Brian, as far as Lincoln Cure likes Notre Dame a good bit. He does. But I've kind of reported in a piece recently and on the message board that I think that Notre Dame would have a legitimate chance with Lincoln Cure, but since they offered him a few weeks ago, there hasn't been a ton of communication, which has kind of been a little bit odd, right? So as of right now, I don't think that Lincoln Cure is incredibly realistic just because I don't think Notre Dame's pushing for whatever reason. I don't exactly know what the logic is there. But I would say that I think there's going to be expansion to the board, though. I think there's going to be expansion. We already saw it a little bit with Nicholas Townsend, who's out of Texas, 6'4", 225. He's being recruited as an athlete, but I watched him and I'm just like, that's a tight end, most likely. Like that looks like a tight end to me. I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame pushes for him. They seem to like him a good bit. And I also wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame expands the tight end board a little bit moving forward as well. So I do expect Notre Dame to push for 2 tight ends in the 2025 class. I'm just not sure that that's going to be Lincoln Cure.
Beautiful. Nothing to add to that because that's your deal right there. All right, here we go.
Yeah. RJG Irving, mailbag. Do tackles and guards have specific skill sets which pair well with one another? Example, does a certain left tackle pair better with a specific guard who has skill sets that fit best at the left guard position?
I mean, it all depends. There are so many different variables that go into pairing guys with each other. It can be as simple as some guys just don't do well with their left hand in the dirt, and another guy does better with his right hand in the dirt. You know what I mean? Like it could be that simple. It could just be these two guys communicate better with each other from a verbal standpoint and from a physical standpoint. They just communicate better, so we're going to put them together. It could be something as simple as that. From a technical standpoint, I mean, obviously there's differences between guards and tackles. But when you're pairing guys together, it's just a lot of intangible stuff, in my personal opinion. Ryan, what do you think about that?
Sorry, I got preoccupied for a second. Someone was calling me an idiot on Twitter again.
I wish I had a nickel for every time that happened to me.
LSU fans, surprise, surprise.
Oh, shocker.
Yes. So I think that it used to be a little bit more centric to left tackle, left guard, a little bit more of the finesse position because of the blind side, right? And then the right guard, right tackle used to be a little bit more run centric. So they were more of I always think of the Philadelphia Eagles when I first started watching them heavily because I'm not an Eagles fan, but I grew up outside of Philly, so I watched a lot of Eagles football. They had at one point Trey Thomas at left tackle, who changed his name to William Thomas, and then John Runyon at right tackle, right? That was the prototype at the time. Trey Thomas was big, but he was a really fleet mover, really good foot quickness, length. And then also on the right side, you had John Runyon, who was just a brute. Like he was so physical and so just monster, right? And that's why you put a guy like Rocco Spindler at right guard because he's on the front side of plays. He's to the strong side a lot, and he's going to be kind of that physical mauler. So I think that there's a traditional sense of let's put the physical dudes who maybe don't have as great a length on the right side. Let's still put the longer guys with a little bit foot quickness on the left side consistently. But I think you can mix and match it as well too, Vince. Like I'm not opposed to really talented left tackle who's more of a finesse guy, a mover, and a left guard being a little bit more of a physically demanding physical dude to pair with the left tackle and left guard. I think it also depends on run game philosophy, what you're trying to accomplish overall. But I think typically the past has told us is typically more athletic guys, longer guys on the left side, right side is a little bit more the physically imposing type of dudes. That's traditionally what it's been anyway.
Nice.
Andre Tonsel, what 2 players on offense and defense most interesting seeing in action? So, Vince, let's start with the offensive guys for you, man. 2 guys offensively that you're most excited to see.
I mean, I'm going to take the softball answer here, and it's Steve Angeli and Jeremiah Love. Like those, and for different reasons, right? I want to see Steve Angeli for what he can do in this game and see him from start to finish in a game that is his and his alone. But then I want to see Jeremiah Love for what he's going to be not only on Friday, but in the future, because he is so freaking talented. And I hope that they just move his butt all over the field and just get him so involved in the offense. Like I am so excited to see what 12 looks like as the lead guy.
Yes. Jeremiah Love is number 1 for me offensively. Number 2 offensively, I actually want to see Eli Raridan in this football game at time. Okay. It's a tough call between Jaden Greathouse and Eli Raridan and Charles Jagasaw. Like those 3 guys are guys that I really want to see. But I want to see Eli Raridan a little bit in this one, Vince. We saw him kind of take a little bit of the onus as the de facto starter down the stretch. I mean, that was one of the reasons that that Holden Stace left, right? Because it was like Eli was just kind of ascending into that guy. And without Mitchell Evans healthy, I think that Eli Raritan could play a big role in this football game because what is a young quarterback's best friend? Tight ends. That could really be a big asset to them, obviously. So give me some Eli Raritan, Jeremiah Love, just rarely going over Jaden Greathouse that I've seen a little bit more of at this point, and Charles Jagasaw, the new starting left tackle.
Defensively, it's tough because we've seen
Yep.
the vast majority of the defense that is going to be out there. And so I guess I'll say Gray at corner
Christian Gray's a good one.
because he's going to be new to the starting bunch or new to the playing a lot bunch. And man, other than that, Drake Bowen. I would love to see Drake Bowen
Bowen's
get some more snaps. I think that's going to be, obviously he's not going to be starting in the game, but he's going to get some opportunities, I think, at Mike. And so those will be my two guys.
Yeah, I think Christian Gray is a really good one. I would like to see a lot of Christian Gray and see what he's able to do with the opportunity, kind of cycling in with Jaden Mickey a little bit. The one guy that I would also mention, Vince, because I think Drake Bowen's a really good one. I'm excited to see a Don Schuler, hopefully, in this football game.
Yeah,
because
he was on. Yeah.
We're going to see we're going to probably see both of the true freshman safeties in this one. We're going to see Minnick and we're going to see Adon Schuler.
Yep.
And Adon Schuler is listed as the backup to DJ Brown in this football game. So I'm excited to see him as kind of that alley safety coming up, being physical. Sure. I really am interested to see how Adon Schuler does in this football game.
Absolutely agree with that.
Andy Milton fan, do you foresee bowl games being played in the future by second string players with starters not going to the draft sitting out?
So not opting out, but just sitting out, just taking the day off. Like I don't see that. I guess I don't see that being the case, Milton. I don't. If they're still on the team, they're going to play. Like
right. Because some guys are going to be returning to the team next year, right? Like not every veteran player is just going to sit out who's coming back next year, for one. I think for two, also, I understand because you're a Notre Dame fan, right, Nathan? Obviously. So you look at this game and say Notre Dame's out a bunch of key players, Oregon State's out a bunch of key players. There's a lot of backups in this football game. I get why your mindset's there, but like a different team, like there's a lot of different football teams that are playing in bowl season this year, and a lot of them are not playing backups. Like they're trying to win the football game. I mean, there's some teams that like Jacksonville State this year, and I know Notre Dame is much different than Jacksonville State, but Jacksonville State literally like appealed to be able to play in a bowl game this year. You don't think that they're going to play their starters? Heck yeah, they are, because they want to win the football game, man. Yeah. So I think that there's situations that are always be different, but I think overall it's never going to get to that point because it is valuable to a lot of different teams. It just maybe more than what it's valuable for this Notre Dame Oregon State game that we're going to see on Friday.
Yep. Agreed.
But it's a good question. Irish Blooded. Have they announced if they will have names on uniforms or not for the bowl game?
I don't think that's really something that they announce anymore because it's just kind of a tradition. They just do it. I think they've done it every year since Charlie started it when they went to the Hawaii Bowl with Jimmy Clausen. And I'm pretty sure they've done it every year since then. So I don't think that's kind of an announcing thing. I think they just do it. It's just understood. It's happened every year that I can remember since then. So I would be shocked if that was not the case in this game. I would be shocked. Yes.
I love it, man. I love it.
There's not much to be shocked about in this game. So I'll be shocked if they don't have names on the back of their uniforms.
That's funny. That's hilarious. Yeah. Luke Breeding, is Nolan Ziegler available for the bowl game? Excuse me. So he's not on the 2 deep, right? So I mean, I'm not 100% sure, Luke. I honestly could probably text Brian now and see if he's kind of participating in practice. I think that would be a huge indicator, obviously. I know he'd come back later in the year, so I would assume so. I haven't heard that he isn't available for the bowl game, but obviously he's not on the 2 deep right now, so he must still be maybe just working back in. We saw him on special teams a lot, obviously, later in the year, so maybe that's just kind of the trajectory for the rest of the season, but I haven't heard that he isn't playing in the bowl game, so we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't be available. I mean,
in some capacity, right? Like maybe not starting or being that guy, but yeah.
100%. Like I'm obviously trolling his Twitter account at the moment, but like on December 11th, he was dunking, he's got his pinned deal that, he was on special teams. He's got a video, of him making a play there. I mean, he's going to be available. I don't know why he wouldn't be available unless there's something that I don't know.
At least on special teams,
him.
more than likely, right?
Right, exactly. And I think based on the way everything kind of went down this year, kind of missing half the year and things like that, I think that, the fact that he's on special teams and contributing in a direct way is fantastic. Like I think that's the ceiling for this year, just because of how the first part of the year went down, with some of the injury and the sitting out and, all of that. So I don't see why he wouldn't be available for special teams in this particular game.
You want to hear the greatest reply I've ever seen on X real quick? So I retweeted Mike Denbrock being officially hired.
I saw that. Yeah.
There's been a big thing. LSU fans are saying that they never wanted Mike Denbrock. I was like,
right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, hilarious.
So I just said it's okay. LSU fans didn't want him apparently. And then this LSU fan commented said, Ryan, you're an idiot. We love Denbrock and wish him well as he chooses to coach a lesser team to be close to his home and family. And I retweeted that, Vince, and I simply said, you could have just stopped after the first sentence of saying, Ryan, you're an idiot, and I would have disagreed with you. So. people take – I want to remind everybody out there, and I reminded someone of this a couple weeks ago. Twitter is not real life.
No, it's not.
Not real life. So if you want to call me an idiot or stupid on Twitter, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good, man.
I mean, people were coming at me the other day because I said there was no way Mike Denbrock was going to come back to Notre Dame, and
yes,
they had to, cut out the part of the video that I said that, didn't matter that the next day I was saying different things, but whatever, it's no big deal. And, this one guy just would not let it go, So, I blocked him or whatever. And then he got all mad that I blocked him. And I mean, it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. I tweeted later on, I was like, yeah, I'm going to sleep just fine tonight. Like this is not, you're not hurting me in any way on this. It's like,
that's
come
hilarious.
on, people, like get over yourselves. But anyway, all right, back to the mailbag. And speaking of Mike Denbrock,
Kevin Park said, will Mike Denbrock be at the game? I mean, typically, Vince, I don't know if he's announced this, but usually when the coach is hired before the bowl game, usually they are in attendance. I mean, I saw a team, I forget what team it was, but like their new offensive coordinator that is not coaching during the bowl game was there to watch, right? And to be able to just kind of self-scout a little bit and to just be around the team. So would I be surprised if Mike Denbrock was there? Nah. I wouldn't be surprised about that. But do I know for certain that he will be there? Also, no. But I again, like if he's in attendance, I just would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised at all if he's there. In fact, I would expect him to be there. If I'm being honest, I think this is a great opportunity for him to see what these guys can do in person, because he's not going to get a chance to do that until spring ball because of all the rules and everything else, right?
I would also just like to just kind of be in the meeting room, like just be a fly on the wall. Like I don't need to talk to the guys or to be the lead voice in the room either. Like I just want to hear terminology and what they're doing and what they're looking at and, all that type of stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's there.
No, I wouldn't be surprised. And I think he probably will be there. He's probably still dealing with stuff in Baton Rouge and getting himself situated. And I guess he has a house to buy as well too, right? So,
he's
probably got a lot of things on his list, right? I mean, there's a lot of things going on that he's got going down, but I would be shocked if he wasn't there. I mean, what else is he doing on December 29th? I mean, I feel like he'll probably be there unless he had like a vacation already set up, that kind of a deal. But I think he'll be there. I do. So
sure.
But good question, because I think we're all wondering that, right? Okay, here we go.
We had RIP Jules. Will our new offensive line be able to create some holes for our backs? I mean, yeah, I think they can. Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, is there going to be probably some missteps for like a Charles Jagasaw in pass protection during this game? Sure, probably. A little bit of miscommunication, maybe a couple false steps, all that type of stuff. But the one thing I know, Vince, Charles Jagasaw is imposing, man. Like that kid is 6'7", 330 pounds and plays with good bends. I think that he is going to be a pretty good run blocker from the onset. I think that you have Billy Schrouth, who is going to be an asset in that run game. I think Ashton Craig could be that. I think Pat Coogan is a pretty strong guy. I think that he can be an asset in there as well. My biggest question about the offensive line is actually not left tackle with Charles Jagasaw. I don't know what to expect of right tackle. You know, if it's Tosh Baker, he's been rough in some outings that he's had, obviously. Is Emil Wagner going to be able to play a little bit and to be that guy? I don't know what to expect of right tackle, but I ultimately do think the offensive line will be just fine and good enough.
Yep, I do too. I think they will open holes for the backs. I think the backs are going to make some plays. So I don't see an issue there. Now, might it take a little bit longer for them to gel maybe in the game?
Possible.
Yeah, that's absolutely possible, but I do think they have the ability to create holes for the backs. No doubt about that.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Next one's from Chief Brody. What's up, Chief? When is the maximum number of years that it's okay for Marcus Freeman to not have the team competing for a title, at least a playoff win or two?
I mean, the definition of a playoff win is going to be a lot different starting next year than it is this year, because a playoff win this year means you're in the national championship game. A playoff next year means that you probably won at home in December against a lesser opponent. Like,
yep.
You know what I mean? So like I think we have to change our definition of that. And I think we also need to change our definition of competing for a title. Is competing for a title just making the 12-team playoff? You're competing for a title.
Well, that's next year then. That's next year if that's the yep.
Right? So if he's in the top 12, let's say he's the 11 seed, right? Let's say Notre Dame is the 11 seed in a 12-team playoff, because they'll never be the 12 seed, right? Because that'll always be that group of 5 team. So let's say Notre Dame's the 11 seed. Are they competing, quote unquote, for a title? I mean, technically, yes. So,
sure.
We have to adjust our definitions, but I think what Chief Brody is trying to say is, how long is the leash on Marcus Freeman? He's going to have to continue to make some incremental steps at the very least, right? So if they win the Sun Bowl, they got 10 wins, right? I think next year they got to have at least 10 wins during the regular season, and then an 11th bowl win, whatever that happens to be, right? And if they have 10 wins in the regular season, they're in the playoff.
Most likely. Yep.
You know what I mean? And so you got to win that first round game. Then you're making those incremental steps, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
No, I think you're right, because I think in 2024 you have to make the playoff in its 12 team. Like, you have to make the playoff to be a legitimate championship contender. I would say by year 4. I mean, because in year 4 in 2025, you are going to have a stable, and that team is going to 100% be Marcus Freeman's team. That is going to be fully his recruits, his coaching staff, everything. That's going to be his baby.
Yes,
so to be a win championship, year 4, I think, is the year that you have to get, or at least contend for that. Year 3, though, I think in 2024, you have to make the playoff. Like, not as in like make the playoff or you're out type of situation, but like in the trajectory of this program, to your point, Vince, like you have to be in that conversation. I would say that.
Yeah, I think they had to make the playoff next year. I mean, that would have been, it would be a very disappointing situation if, I mean, 2 losses, I think, gets you in the playoff. 1 loss absolutely gets you in the playoff, right? So I think 2 losses, depending on how the rest of college football looks, right? If Notre Dame had 2 losses this year, they would have been in the top 12. Like, they would have been in the 12-team playoff if they had 2 losses this year. They'd have been in a New Year's 6, right? And so a New Year's 6 bowl is essentially a playoff berth, right? I mean, that's basically what we're talking about. So 2 losses gets you in. I would still be disappointed with 2 losses, if I'm being honest. I think, next year is a 1 loss to no loss opportunity for Notre Dame. And so 2 losses would be disappointing, but they're in the playoff. That's still a step in the right direction. So, man, you still got to be making those steps, and eventually you're going to run out of steps without winning a national championship, right? So, I think I'm not firing him if he continuously makes the playoff. Like, that's not what I would do if I was Notre Dame, but there would have to be some changes made to show that they can go the next step, right? And I don't think that's the head coach.
There has to be exponential growth. Like, I mean, in year 3, you can't flatline and just be kind of the same, right? Like, you need to be continuing to build and continuing to take next steps. And I think as long as Notre Dame has shown exponential growth from a year-to-year basis, I'm comfortable, right? Because that means next year double-digit win team to what you said already in this regular season, and you're contending for obviously you're going to be in a playoff spot more than likely. Then you're going to be in contention for playoff. The year after that, you get a little bit better and a little bit better. Again, like it's a building process. I think that we just want quick fixes too much, but it's about sustainability for a program.
Right.
And I do think that it's becoming sustainable for Marcus Freeman. It's just about keep building, man, because they're recruiting at a high level. They have put together now, I would say, I mean, again, Vince, like this coaching staff in 2024 is going to be a lot better than it was in 2023, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah, I agree. And the schedule's
better.
easier and the roster's better. Like I think all of those things apply, right? And going into it, that equals more wins in theory, right? That equals more wins, but we'll have to see how it goes. I thought they should have had more wins this year. So, we'll see how it all shakes out. All right. This is more of a comment than a question, but something we can toss back and forth.
From Paul Samoro said, with all the players on both teams who decided to opt out, the game will show
probably who has,
the better.
I would think.
Has the recruiting the better players. Notre Dame should have an edge with Angeli, but we shall see. I mean, yeah, we talked about that. I mean, I think it's about depth of talent. That's why I don't know. Like I push back on recruiting rankings a lot because I think that you're trusting someone to evaluate it that you don't know their credentials as an evaluator, and I just think that's a little bit inconsistent, right? But I also think that the blue chip ratio is a good indicator, Vince. Like that's obviously like amount of 4 and 5 star players that you have comparative to the entire class, and I think it does show depth. So I like that to a degree, and I think that Notre Dame is definitely the more deep team than what Oregon State is coming into this football game.
I agree. And like you said, we talked about the depth. I think Notre Dame has the much deeper team than Oregon State does, and it shows by who's actually going to be playing in this game. The only thing I would push back here on, Paul, is the only indicator as to who wins this game will not be Steve Angeli. Like, I don't think he's the edge that Notre Dame has. Because if you're just comparing quarterbacks, I mean, the other quarterback has 8 career starts, and he's played in 10 games, and he's got, he's got a bunch of experience, albeit in 2022, but he's got way more experience than Steve Angeli does. And so I don't know that that's like the tipping point that I would give Notre Dame the edge. It's the depth everywhere else is where I would give Notre Dame the edge. So that's the only point I would push back on, Paul. Other than that, I think you're spot on. It is going to show who has the deeper team, who has the better roster. And I think at the end of the day, that is going to be Notre Dame.
Michael Johnson, the passing game may be better than people think. Steve has been throwing to these guys on the second team all year, and the timing should be down for this game.
I mean, I understand your theory, Michael, but the starting wide receivers in this game are going to be Jaden Greathouse, Jaden Thomas, Deion Colsey, Jordan Faison. I mean, those aren't guys that Steve Angeli's been throwing to. Those are guys
on a little bit, right?
Faison a little bit
of the year,
but like the second half of the year, those are the guys that Sam Hartman's been throwing to, or they've been injured. So the passing game may be better than we think, and that would be fantastic if they do the things that we're talking about them doing. I think the passing game could be very effective, right? Run after the catch, and all of those different things. But to the point of he's been throwing to these guys all season, I don't think that is actually accurate.
No, I think it's about efficiency, and I think that obviously will help being familiar with a couple guys. Like I think you're going to have more familiarity as far as throwing to Jordan Faison, maybe to a Cooper Flanagan, for instance, maybe a couple of the running backs. So you'll have some familiarity. I think you'll be fine. Look, I want efficiency in this game, Vince. Like for me, a successful game for Steve Angeli is 14 of 20, 70%, 180 something yards, a touchdown or 2. Like, cool, man. You're doing your job, and I love it. Great.
Yep. And Notre Dame wins by 3 touchdowns in that regard. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I expect. So we'll see how it goes. But look, again, Steve Angeli is not going to win this game for you, but he could lose the game for you. He just needs to go out and do his thing and be efficient, and he'll be just fine. And everybody will be raving about Steve Angeli and how amazing he is. It'll be awesome.
Yes. Ida Benami. What's up, Iden? How confident are you in Deion Colsey taking the next step as we expected? I still have hope. I mean, I'm in a wait and see approach at this point, Iden. I still believe in the talent, but at some point the production needs to follow, and it's been a partly injury related. It's been partly not getting enough opportunities related, but I mean, the clock is nearing the end for Deion Colzie, obviously. I mean, if it doesn't happen in 2024, it's probably never going to happen, right?
That I
So
agree with. Yeah.
uh, I still believe in the talent, Vince, but I mean, you have to see more, obviously, than what we've seen so far.
Well, and here's the thing about Deion Colzie too, and I think a lot of people forget this, right? I mean, this is his third year, but he has yet to have a healthy season. Like, if he can be completely healthy next year, he has a
Yep.
chance to be that guy. I mean, he has a chance to be the
Sure.
guy we thought he could be, right? If it doesn't happen next year, then I agree. Then it's kind of a lost cause. Injuries have just hurt him so much, and at first it was kind of a mental side of things. Then it was injuries, and he couldn't get on the field, and he just hasn't been consistent to be consistent on the field. And
Yep.
so, I still believe that he could be he's not going to be the guy. He's not going to be the A receiver. I don't think that's going to happen, but he can still be a very, very key contributor to this team because he's got all the physical attributes that you need to be really, really good. And so,
Yeah.
Personally, I hope that this game is a nice little springboard for him into the offseason and then into the spring.
It's how you draw it up as a boundary receiver. I mean, 6'5",
Sure.
215 pounds. It's probably been clocked in the high 4.4s at Notre Dame. So he's athletically gifted, man. I hope he puts it together, but
Me too.
I guess I'm not holding my breath. It's kind of where I'm coming from on this one. So we'll see.
Hear that. Oh, Iden has another one here, and this will be very interesting.
Can we get a picture of Brian with a sombrero on, please? LOL. Well, my first question item would be, how much of a super chat can you drop for that one? Because then we could run it by the boss man to see if that's enough for him. But I don't know if it's a very realistic. I don't know. I can imagine Brian with a sombrero on. I don't know.
It's on par with seeing Marcus Freeman in a sombrero, and I have seen that with my own eyes, and that was an interesting picture that I saw. But I would say that's probably not going to happen, my man. But you never know. You never know.
I'm sure there's a price. I'm sure there's a price.
There's a price for everything.
Everyone has a price.
There is a price for everything. That is for sure.
Salty Virginia Peanuts. What things were in the D'Addario and Robert's family gift stockings? Any lumps of coal?
Ooh, harsh. My wife thinks it's hilarious to get me like the candy that's shaped like coal. Like she thinks that's so funny. Yeah.
Is
so
it good
that's,
though?
No, it's like that cheap chocolate. I think it's
nice.
Yeah. She hasn't done that in a few years, but man, was that a running joke for quite a while. But yeah, I mean, look, the daddy D'Addario stocking usually is, I think I got some socks, in there, some candy, some things like that. The attention is more towards the younger children.
Yes. Yeah. My stocking wasn't too full. I think I got a new iPhone charger because mine had just broken. So that was an easy one, right? So a new iPhone charger.
Nice.
Some razors. Got some razors. I think I got a pair of socks in there too.
All things that are needed. Like that's
needed.
Those are my Christmas gifts in general. Like it's all stuff that is needed. Like stuff, practical.
You can't stay this clean shaven and good looking without some good razors. So
you're not wrong. You are not wrong, sir. All right. Let's see what's next here. Oh, here we go. This is an easy one.
Item Benami, how many starts games has the quarterback played? I think it's 12 overall and 8 starts in 2022. I believe is the number.
He played in 10 games in 22 and 8 starts. But I think he had a couple of games this year where he got in, he threw like one pass. So that probably equals the 12 that you're referring to. Yeah.
Him and Kenny Minchie have yet to throw an incomplete pass this season for their respective teams. So there you go.
Third string quarterbacks, baby. Best players on the team. Best players on the team.
Got DK. Who is the MVP of the bowl game and why is it Steve Angeli? I'm gonna go Jeremiah Love.
That was gonna be mine too. I think he is going to affect the game on the ground and through the air. And he's going to get in the end zone a couple different times. And I think he's going to be dynamic in this game as well. So I'm with you, Ryan. I think that I would go with Jeremiah Love as well. But we all know, I mean, look, Tyler Buckner was the MVP of the game last year. And he threw like 7 touchdowns, 3 the wrong way or 2 the wrong way or whatever the stat line ended up being, right? He was responsible for a boatload of touchdowns and still got the MVP.
I think it was 5 touchdowns,
Was
2
it
pick
5?
sixes, and three touchdowns, and I think he had 2 more on the ground. Yeah,
there you go. I mean, it was ridiculous. Game. It was a ridiculous stat line, but he was the MVP. So obviously they're going to lean quarterback for the winning team, sure. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it was Steve Angeli, but I think Jeremiah Love will deserve it at the end.
J Love. 70-yard touchdown in this game. I'm calling it.
It's going to be fun to watch.
Joe Allen, over/under on defensive scores. Are we talking both teams? Or are we talking one team? I think that's an important question to ask.
I'd say let's go both teams. Like over/under all defensive scores in the game.
I mean, what would you set the over/under on first? I mean, I defensive scores. I mean, I'm either like 0.5 or 1.5.
I think you got to put it at 0.5.
Like
I mean, you got to put it at 0.5, right? I mean, because defensive scores just don't always happen.
Sure.
So I think you got to put it at 0.5.
Okay. I'm going to say over 0.5. Oh, 2, Joe? For both? No. I'm not even going to push there. I'm going under on 2, over on 0.5. That's my guess.
Yeah, so I would agree with that because I think Notre Dame will score on the defensive side of the football. If Oregon State is scoring on defense, that could be a longer day for Notre Dame than we had anticipated. Let's go that route.
And I Joe, I know this isn't you thing because this does happen in Vegas, but I hate the whole number lines on the over-unders, man. Like I need a half somewhere in there, man. I need a half. No twos.
I absolutely agree with that. No.
Nothing worse than getting a push, man. Nothing worse.
Nothing worse. It's like a tie. Ugh. All right.
Spencer Kane. Will Jeremiah Love become running back 1 next year?
I mean, they're going to obviously use multiple running backs, but sure. I would put my money on Jeremiah Love being the number 1 guy.
Yes, I think that he could eventually assume the de facto RB1 conversation. I don't think it's going to look the same as what Audric Estime was this year, though, because I think that the offense is just going to be a little bit more spread out from a run game perspective. So I don't think it's going to be, 250 carries to 70 carries,
right,
or vice versa like that, right? I think it's going to be a little bit more split, but I would not be surprised if at the end of the year, if Jeremiah Love is the unquestioned starter, right, RB1, and then you're looking at Jadarian Price and saying, like, that is a dynamic second running back that gets a lot of playing time. I think that it could happen.
All right. I agree with that completely. Here we go. Because there's going to be a lot of talent in that running back room. And so you're going to want to get those guys touches. But, yeah, I think he's going to be the lead guy.
I know it's super early. It's from Tyler Binge. I know it's super early, but 2026 quarterbacks? Oh, man, we're talking 2026s. Talking about it. I mean, there's a few guys, though. I mean, honestly, like, I think everybody and their mother has offered Julian Lewis, who's the Georgia kid that's already committed to USC. A couple guys, though, Tyler. Sorry, go Vince. Sorry.
I was going to say, USC. Ugh. But, yes. I mean, what are the odds that they're going to have the same head coach by the time a sophomore in high school is going to college?
Yes, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But a couple guys, Tyler, that I know Notre Dame is, I mean, I think total Notre Dame has offered 6 guys in the 2026 class at quarterback.
Wow. 2
guys that stand out to me that I think Notre Dame likes and that have one has visited campus for sure. The other one I think might as well. One is Ryder Lyons, who's out of Folsom, who I like a lot. He's more of a dual threat quarterback. But he is the younger brother of Walker Lyons, who was a Stanford commit in the 2023 class, flipped to USC, and I believe he's on his Mormon mission right now. But he is the younger brother there. I think Notre Dame likes him quite a bit. Obviously, there's a little bit of a limitation on how much you can talk to a 2026 quarterback right now. But I think that there's a good early conversation there. And then Noah Grubbs, who's a quarterback out of the state of Florida, just threw like 40-something touchdowns as a sophomore in high school. Yeah, he's also like 6'4", 215 already. Like he's a pretty big kid as well. He's been on campus at Notre Dame. He visited for a game this past year. So Noah Grubbs, Ryder Lyons, a couple of guys to keep a close eye on, I suppose.
Wow, that's amazing that you actually have names of 26 kids.
Yeah, what is this comment? Folsom. We sure about that? Yeah, he went to Folsom. So goes to Folsom High School in California. Oh, Rico Flores. Got it. He was a Rico Flores comic because he went to Folsom. Got it.
Oh,
Yep.
gotcha. All I can
They,
think
they
of
like
is
him though, man. They like on him. And Jason just mentioned Brady Hart. He's been the most recent quarterback that Notre Dame has offered as well. So yeah,
gotcha.
just a few guys on the board, man. A few guys.
All right, 2026 sophomores, nuts.
Yes.
All right,
Sophomore in high schools, man. Yeah,
man,
they have a lot of options already on the table.
crazy.
Sloppy Joe. I saw Kevin Humes, the cornerback out of the state of Maryland, is reclassifying to 2024. Where does Notre Dame stand with him? I think Notre Dame made his top 5 list at this point because he's originally a 2025 kid reclassifying to 2024. I would just be surprised if he ended up with Notre Dame. Just kind of leave it at that for now. I don't think they were counting on that happening, and I don't think there's been a crazy push for Kevin Humes over the last few weeks. Just in general, I think that there's been a couple cornerbacks that have risen up the board a little bit. The Mark Zachary's of the world, the Dallas Goldens of the world, the Devin Williamses of the world. There's a few corners that Notre Dame really likes in the 2025 class. And now that Humes is in 2024, I expect Notre Dame to be, quote unquote, on final lists, quote unquote, in contention until the end. But I don't envision Kevin Humes ending up with Notre Dame. So unless something drastically changes down the stretch here.
All right.
Mark with glasses. What's up, Mark? Will it be a true open quarterback competition, or are we handcuffed? Hate that terminology. To Riley Leonard because of the NIL and optics of it all, and our one-year rental quarterbacks unbenchable because when Sam Hartman stunk, it sure felt like it.
Wow. Well, first of all, is there going to be a competition? Maybe. Riley Leonard's going to be the starter. And it's not because of NIL and the optics of it all. It's because Riley Leonard's better right now on December 27th and will be again on September 1st or whenever the first game is than everybody else that is on the roster. So that's why he's going to start. It's not because of NIL. It's not because of the optics. It's because he's going to be better. That's my opinion. And you're not handcuffed to Leonard. You recruited Leonard. They're just as handcuffed to him as they are to everybody else that they recruited. So I don't like that. I agree with you. I don't like that terminology. But
just sounds so negative, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's like a very negative connotation.
Yes,
to it. Yeah.
I know. Right. That's absolutely correct. So, did Sam play perfect all year round? No, he certainly did not. And the second half of the season didn't play great. I agree with you. But do we think that who they had on the roster was going to be a better option at that point? I just don't know if that's the case. So I understand why they stuck with Sam Hartman. And it's not because of all the off the field stuff.
Right. Yeah. I look, you bring Riley Leonard in here to start at quarterback in Notre Dame. Even if they call it a competition, I'm not fully buying it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not
right.
Yeah.
So, if they try to push that there's a competition, if they try to push that narrative, that's exactly what it is. It's a narrative.
I call shenanigans. I call shenanigans on that one. But yeah, I think that it will be Riley Leonard, and unless he is injured at some point, I think that it's going to ride with Riley Leonard. The handcuff thing is extremely negative in my opinion. I don't like that terminology at all. I think that just sounds that you're obliged and limited to a thing when it's just like, hey man, I mean, if I'm handcuffed to a 6'4", 215-pound, 4'6" athlete who has big time potential every year, like that sounds great to me. Like I'll be very happy about that. So handcuffed, I think, is just not the right terminology I would use there.
Yeah, agreed. Here's a good one.
T Smith 0323. How do you guys feel about Chip Kelly saying college needs to be like the NFL and just have schools go independent and have commissioner run it? Keep the other sports separate.
I listened to his little rant that he had. I think it's probably a few weeks ago now.
Yep.
I got to say, I kind of love it.
Yes, Vince. Thank you. I thought you were going to be against it at first. Thank you.
I love it because, look, we all talk about, with like, for example, all those Pac-12 teams going to the Big Ten and like all these other things. Okay, it works for football because, it's one day a week. The travel is what it is. You go the day before. It's no big deal. It is going to be hell for all of the other sports. And so at this point, the way college football is going, you do just need to separate college football from everything else, allow the Olympic sports to go back into their regionalized conferences so that they can actually compete regionally, because they play during the week, most of them, Tuesdays,
Yep.
Thursdays, Wednesdays, whatever the case may be, you need to be regional for that. Okay. If you still want them to go to school and be somewhat successful in the classroom. Okay. So those need to be regionalized. Football doesn't need to be regionalized because of the way that it is run. The only conference that I'm aware of, and I don't know all of the lower conferences, is the MAC, who plays on like a Tuesday and things like that, football wise. But if football was independent, you put everybody on the weekend. It is what it is. And you have a commissioner that runs it. I freaking love it. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's long overdue at this point.
Yeah, I like it too, because I think the biggest thing is that the NCAA is a bunch of nincompoops and they're not helping anything anyway. So being able to, I think that it's great, one, that Notre Dame is independent to begin with, and I think that it will give flexibility to a lot of other teams, and I think that would be I mean, if we're just trying to create a pool of great football, let these teams run their thing and be able to create their own revenue stream that way, and to actually assist their players more efficiently than depending on the NCAA to just kind of create the wild, wild west. I'm a big fan of getting away from that NCAA model and just letting these teams govern themselves basically at this point. So I'm for it, man. I heard him and I'm just like, Chip Kelly said that? All right, Chip. All right, man. I respect it. Good job, Chip.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. I completely agree. I think it's a fantastic idea. We actually have a super chat. I'm going to throw it up. Here we go.
Jim Holleran. Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate the super chat. Ryan, great article with Cam Williams. Happy New Year. Go Irish. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man.
A super chat to throw some love to Ryan. I love that. So make sure you guys check it out. IrishBreakdown.com. It's probably right over there, and it's available to everybody. So there we go. There's comments in here that people are not big fans of Riley Leonard, and they hope somebody beats him out. Don't get your hopes up, folks. That's just not going to happen. I mean, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I just don't see that being the case. So, all right.
Chief Brody, realistic season by season goals for Marcus Freeman. I think it's 10-2, whether that's playoff or not. And I think New Year's 6 playoff win in the next 2 to 3 seasons. We talked about that a little bit, right? Kind of the trajectory of the program, but
no, we did. And I think, first of all, New Year's 6 games are going away. They're pretty much going to be playoff games now. So I think that he will need to win a playoff game, obviously, moving forward. And with the way that the playoff is situated, as long as Notre Dame is 5, 6, 7, or 8, they're going to be able to host a playoff game at Notre Dame Stadium in December. And so I like his chances of winning a playoff game. I do. Much more so than if we said you got to win a playoff game over the past 10 years, because that would have meant they were playing for a national championship.
Right.
They've got a really good roster. The schedule breaks down really well for them, over the next couple of years. I think, the quarterback position plays out very well for them. I think, a lot of things are pointing in a positive direction. And so Marcus Freeman is obviously, as the head coach, is going to have to take advantage of that and be successful. You don't have to win. It's impossible to win a national championship every single year, right?
Yes.
But you need to be in the conversation. You need to be, part of that. Maybe a 1-year dip, but then right back into the conversation. That kind of a situation.
Agreed. I think that you are now with the 12-team playoff. I think that has to be the realistic goal every single year, Chief. And with a 10-2 record, you're going to make it more often than not. So 10 wins plus every year, I think, has to be the realistic goal, because that's honestly what the standard was before Marcus Freeman got here. Like, they expected Notre Dame to win 10 plus games. You expect them to win double-digit games each year. If they do it from now on, it's going to be about potentially making the playoffs. And in then probably a shorter window, maybe the next 3 years or so, you got to contend for a national championship. You have to potentially win one and to be that type of team. So I think that's kind of the window I'm looking for moving forward.
Yep, absolutely correct. All right, a couple more here we'll get to.
We have David Carpenter. Tell me what to watch on the first series for Notre Dame. Notre Dame offense and defense indicated will be a good day for the Irish. Offensive and defensive lines, David. Like, if there is a good push and good push and communication offensively, I think it's a great sign. And if Notre Dame is just wreaking havoc defensively, getting a push and creating some penetration defensively, I think if you win in the trenches in this game, then you have the opportunity to blow Oregon State out.
Yep, completely agree. If Oregon State goes 3-and-out and Notre Dame is just living in the backfield, I think that's a good sign for what's to come. For the rest of the game, and then defensive or offensively, diversification in the run game, simple throws, confidence. Just like we talked about with the keys to victory, I think you could easily see that in the first series because it'll be on script, and you're going to see kind of what the game plan is for Notre Dame at that point offensively. So if you see those things, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Agreed. We had Will ND. Are any other 2024 recruits practicing with the team besides CJ Carr? Nope, he's the only one. The rest are going to be enrolling officially in January, so they will be there for winter workouts and then spring ball, obviously. But CJ Carr is the only one that was granted that early opportunity to be with the Irish for the bowl prep.
Yep. All right. There's a fun one from Tommy.
T Guns, what's your bet? What's your one surefire bet for the game?
This one's easy for me. It's the line. I think right now it's -6 in favor of Notre Dame. I would take that and run with it. I think that will be an easy one to cover for Notre Dame.
Notre Dame money line and the over under. I think was only like 41.5 or something like that. Give me the over.
Give me the over.
Now.
Okay,
I'll take the over.
Yeah. I'm on the fence. I think I'm going to leave the over under alone, just because I'm not convinced of what Oregon State's going to be able to do. But the -6, I think, is about the most gimme of a bet that's out there. At least that's how I feel. You can cut and splice this part of the podcast and trash me on Twitter, but that's what I think is going to happen. All right, last one.
Okay. Last one from Andre Tonsil. What do you think will have to be the record for Notre Dame to make the playoffs next year? Any teams next year? I think Notre Dame is 10-2 without a conference championship game. I think you have to have double-digit wins to be your top 12 team.
Yep, completely agree with that. I think double digits in the regular season gets you in. Depending on where you're seated at that point will depend on what everybody else is doing and what everybody else is up to as far as their records and things. Like 10-2 would have gotten Notre Dame a New Year's Six bowl this year. It would have been in the top 12, and that's what you need to do to be in the 12-team playoff. And yes, I realize that there are only 11 slots available because one is going to the Group of 5 team. My point still stands that Notre Dame would have been right there if they were 10-2, right?
Sure.
And so, because that last win would have been against Clemson, and they would have been just fine getting into a New Year's Six this year. So, I think 10 wins will get them in more often than not. But obviously, if you want to guarantee yourself a spot, then you want to be 11 or 12 wins. That obviously guarantees you. And obviously, Notre Dame can be no higher than 5th anyway. And so I feel like, to be honest with you, Ryan, 11 or 12 wins get you to that 5th spot every time, are pretty dang close to every time. You know what I mean? You're guaranteed to host a game. Let's put it that way. You're guaranteed to host a game if you've got 11 wins. So
absolutely correct. Agreed.
All right, Ryan, that's going to do it for this edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Make sure everybody likes, subscribes, hit the notification bell, share with your family and friends. If you're not a member of the message board, make sure you get over there, boards.irishbreakdown.com, because there's all kinds of good stuff there. There is going to be a meet and greet at the bowl game in El Paso tomorrow. All the details are on the message board. If you are not a member of the message board, you can message Brian on Twitter. He will give you that information, and you can meet him. Like I said, had a great time when we were down at the Fiesta Bowl. It was a lot of fun, so make sure you head down. I haven't even looked at what the location is, but I'm sure it's going to be probably evening time down there in El Paso tomorrow. So make sure you check that out. And then, of course, as Ryan announced earlier on the show, he's going to be heading down to San Antonio, Texas. And he's going to be talking to a bunch of Notre Dame recruits who are going to be down there for the Army game. And he's going to be down there all week. So if you're down in San Antonio, get a hold of Ryan. I'm sure he would love to hang out as well. But also be connected to irishbreakdown.com, boards.irishbreakdown.com, because there's going to be a bunch of info from Ryan. He's just going to be spitting it out left and right down there from San Antonio. So, guys, we got a football game to watch. It will be playing 48 hours from now. So a football game to watch on Friday. We'll be back with the post-game show directly following. Ryan and I will get things kicked off however long it takes Brian to get from the stadium back to the hotel, he'll jump in, give his thoughts. But we'll all be hopefully talking about a Notre Dame victory in the Sun Bowl and them picking up their 10th win. So until that time, that's Ryan. I'm Vince, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.